Welcome back to the Four Horsemen. Today, we are doing one of our annual State of shows. It, of course, will be the State of Counter-Strike with our guest, Complexity, one-time owner, then not owner, and now owner again, Jason Lake. Congrats on reacquiring Complexity.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So, as usual, guys, there is no
it's
crisis
not congressional hearing here, mate. You could have given a bit more than that. It's like, yes, sir.
And I thank you for the question, Senator. And I will do my best to answer it.
To MonteCristo.
Yeah.
I'm trying not to trip over his intro here. I know he's got
enough,
shit to do. You know.
Fair enough. Okay.
But yeah, there's no crisis here, or maybe there is. We'll tell you if there is one. But typically at the end of the year, guys, we have done a State of Counter-Strike and State of League of Legends just to discuss the kind of health of the scene. We have in the past, talked about esports winter and its relevance. And if you would like the pictorial image, of course, of esports winter, you can check out our collaboration t-shirt with Into the AM. You can check it out at intotheam.com/LFN-T. So that's LFN-TEE. And you guys, we're running a contest right now where you can actually win a $100 gift card for Into the AM if you guys share a photo of yourself wearing our collab t-shirt, both on the LFN Discord or on the pinned post on our Twitter. You guys have got until noon Pacific time next Monday. So it'll be Monday the 24th, Christmas Eve. Many of you have already bought the shirt. Thank you very much. And shout out to Into the AM for continuing to support us here at Last Free Nation. And of course, it is us in skeleton pirate form because we're all dead to the outside world of esports, totally washed. And we are trudging through esports winter regardless. Thank you very much for those of you who have purchased the collab. And now we can discuss the show. So first off, though, we do have a couple just little bits to discuss because there will have to be an airing of grievances to start this, primarily around awards shows, because this does tie into the state of CS, because Donk, obviously, at the Video Game Awards, at the Esports Awards, now Esports Awards took place earlier, so it was going to be counting Team Spirit's victory.
He wasn't even nominated for the Esports Awards.
Yeah. There you go. So now we have the airing of grievances about Counter-Strike. We've already talked on Summoning Insight, if you guys have watched that show, about the horrendous voting around T1 and Faker, which have put him in as winning all of these awards, which he absolutely does not deserve, as he's not even the best League of Legends player of 2024. And I think there's a very strong case you could make right now for Donk as being better than any League of Legends players such as Bin or Chovy, who would have been a much better choice for that award.
Put it this way. There's two angles on this. One is, even though, for example, I haven't still figured out whether I'm going to pick m0NESY or Donk. Like, I'm going to decide at the end of the year and review some games. But either one you pick, most people will pick Donk now because he's won Katowice and the Major, and those are like two of the top 4 tournaments you can possibly win. So the resume angle, by the way, means he already should win it over Faker. Then secondly, anyone who doesn't like Donk thinks he's at worst the second best player of the year. As you said, Monty, Faker isn't in top 2 probably in his game. He's probably like 4th or 3rd, or depends how generous you want to be. And his team wasn't the best. So the worst part about it is, not only does it not make sense like in his own game, but now you're just essentially saying we're just going to ignore Counter-Strike. And actually, it obviously shows the Esports Awards doesn't make sense, because how can you have the awards before the last major is done? Because I can tell you, we used to be on the panel. They used to go, don't worry, what we'll do is next year, that's where it'll start. It doesn't work that way. People's brains go, that was 2024. You delete it at the end of the year and you start in 2025. So it's actually mega egregious, because if you don't know, this is the angle I thought of that was perfect, Monty. No one else did this one. It is Faker. You just took 2013 Faker and stole his award and gave it to a legendary player, because Faker in 2013 in his rookie season was a 17-year-old kid who was the best player in the world and won the world championship at the end of the year. That is what Donk just did. So if you're a Faker fan, imagine if we'd had awards back then, and instead of giving it, my analogy here was because Snacks was the in-game leader of G2 and they won 2 tournaments where he used to be a top 5 player many years ago. Imagine if instead this was like you gave it that year to like a Snacks type figure for being a legend instead of Faker for being the best player in esports at the time. It's actually outrageous if you actually put it in that sort of framing. So I can't believe that people think this is like no biggie, or like you're just hating if you bring it up. Like, you've actually basically robbed a player who, this is how bad it is. If you don't know, guys, in Counter-Strike, people are now having the discussion, not is this the best rookie season? They're asking if this is the best season of Counter-Strike. Like, people are actually asking, is this better than Simple's best year? So that guy can't even get a sniff. In fact, like I told you, because of the time of the awards, he wasn't even nominated. Wasn't even in the fucking on the list. So it does kind of show that Counter-Strike is somewhat out of lockstep with the rest of esports in that sense. We're just our own little world.
I mean, listen, I don't necessarily think it's that, right? For me, while I understand the grievances towards Faker winning PC Player of the Year because he just wasn't, right? Like that's a bad decision anyway. For me, the more egregious one is that Donk didn't win Breakthrough Player of the Year. This is his first rookie
It should
year.
absolutely had that one, even
Right.
without the major, mate. Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, and instead, obviously, because these awards have been captured by the state of Saudi Arabia, it had to go to a Falcons player, and it went to Malrine. Now, listen, Falcons have had a fantastic year in their Dota division. There's no doubt about that. I follow Dota, I work Dota events. But comparing Malrine, who probably isn't even the best mid player in the world, to Donk in terms of their relative breakthroughs, it's not even close. I mean, listen, I said I think you would be very hard pressed to make an objective argument that Donk wasn't the breakthrough player of the year across any esport, PC or otherwise. I mean, he's one of the best rookies we've seen.
Yeah, the best rookie ever in esports,
Yes,
right?
yes,
Ever.
yeah. I mean, like I said, there's maybe an argument for 2013 Faker as the best rookie of all time in any esport ever.
That's a fair one.
But the reality is we're already putting Donk in that conversation, right?
Absolutely.
So that's where he's at, and these are awards for 2024. So I mean, it's a no-brainer. So I don't even mind. Like one of the things with awards, because they're all just a big circle jerk anyway, win or lose. I like it when the circle jerk goes in my favor. Obviously, love it when I win awards. Don't love it when I don't get nominated or don't win awards for lesser people. Like obviously that's just how that rolls, right? But the bottom line is like, sometimes you do get blinded by the name. I'm sure I bagged a fucking award one year where it was just name value and I hadn't really done anything to deserve it. And I've certainly lost awards where I absolutely did fucking deserve it. Shout out to Ashley Kang one time. So, you know, at the end of the day, I don't mind necessarily Faker getting a bullshit award, right? Even though it's egregious and there's much better choices on that list. But the breakout not going to Donk is mental. I mean, that is the one that defies reality. That is the one that really shows how far the esports awards have fallen, because they genuinely, back in the day, used to have their finger on the pulse. The panels were really good. It was all engaged people that really knew what they were talking about. And we went out of our way to bring in expertise from games if we ever saw that the expertise was lacking. Now, it is basically, you boil it down to ESL cronies, Riot cronies. That's it. That's what you have with these awards. And if you look at the awards in their totality, I mean, how can you argue otherwise? Did anyone win an award that didn't have some connection to either entity, Riot Games or ESL, or wasn't on the teat, or wasn't a shill, or didn't promote the Esports World Cup? It's actually crazy how like, if you look at every award, and that's what I mean.
Don't know, like the talent ones were pretty much swept by ESL people from CS, etc., for example. Not that they aren't good, but they just were the ESL mainstays. Yeah,
it's like really hard to like gripe about this, but like hopefully people realize it's not because I want to add to my extensive trophy cabinet. I'm a 3-time Journalist of the Year award winner. That's never going to get beaten, I don't think. No one sticks around long enough to do it. I'm a Lifetime Achievement Award winner.
Also, you can't do journalism anymore, so it's hard to beat you, really, Richard.
Well, yeah, or I end up in a fucking suitcase. So so obviously I don't give a shit. I wouldn't even accept a nomination at this point in time. But I'm telling you, these awards, as soon as they accepted that Riyadh deal, they were done. They were done. They were totally done. And it's reflective of that. And it's going to be very hard for players to get their due. I mean, forget the industry politics. Let's just think about the players. This could be the difference between a future contract, a sponsorship deal. It could, it might not necessarily be legacy defining. I wouldn't say let awards define your legacy, but it could certainly impact on you financially at some point in your career. Awards have to be right where the players are concerned, and that just isn't the case here. And Donk has been very unfairly overlooked.
Do you guys think that because Donk is Russian and the current geopolitical situation, he may
don't think it helps? No,
yeah,
not
he
at
may
all.
have been intentionally overlooked because the perception of celebrating somebody from Russia right now may be considered a negative by some of these awards?
Yeah, I think it's a good point. And look, without getting into the weeds, although we'll probably do that later because I've had 2 bottles of wine at dinner, so I don't really give a fuck. That's just the kind of bougie thing I do now, I suppose, now that I'm 40 years old. What a miserable wretch. Anyway, look, I think certainly behind the scenes, teams that are either have Russian players or are Russian organizations, they are under pressure from Ukrainian entities, big organizations like Na'Vi. There's a lot of politics at play behind the scenes that people don't see. And I think it's certainly easier right now at this moment in time to just not give awards to Russians, whether they earn them or not. Now, we can all have a moral debate about whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, whether Russians should be allowed to be celebrated for their excellence at this moment in time, whether anything that celebrates the nation of Russia is appropriate. I think everything we did with the white flag and not pretending people aren't Russian when they are, irrespective of their stance on the war, I think that was pathetic. I think it's actually a really dark and pathetic chapter in esports history. But maybe I'm on the wrong side of history on that one, like so many times before. But yeah, I think that's probably a factor. Yeah.
All right, I do want to start talking about the actual state of the Counter-Strike scene. So I want to bring Jason in here to talk about how it is from the org side, because obviously the esports winner has been really tough. You are in a unique situation where you're running a Counter-Strike team, a North American team, in a scene that is mostly dominated in Europe. So do you feel like esports winter is lifting at this point in time? And how has your perception of running a business in Counter-Strike been going in 2024?
That's a great question, and it's definitely a long answer. After doing this for 21 years, I've had the fortune or the misfortune, I guess you could say, of enduring a few market corrections. And for years, we anticipated this market correction. I mean, let's be honest, anyone with any common sense or economic sense whatsoever, when they're seeing some of the valuations that teams were raising at and some of the other groups around esports, it just screamed bubble and it screamed market correction. So we tried to better position ourselves to be ready for that for the esports winter. We're out hunting and knitting big thick jackets over here and kind of preparing for it. And I have to be honest, it's now worse than I thought it was going to be. Behind the scenes, from the capital markets to the sponsorship dollars to the league revenues, it is absolutely abysmal, just being honest. For Counter-Strike specifically, and we can go more into this, I'm an eternal optimist. I try to have a long-term view of things. I've studied a lot of people smarter than me and wiser than me in business. And when you make decisions, you need to kind of have a chess type of mindset where you've got a first order effect, a second order effect, a third order effect, so on and so forth. Too many people for way too long in esports only worry about first order effects, especially Valve, by the way, but we'll probably get to that. And as I'm looking at the trajectory of Counter-Strike economically for teams and therefore for players and the rest of the ecosystem, I definitely have concerns. It's no surprise to anyone who's followed the ecosystem for a while that even during the esports winter, Counter-Strike was doing comparatively well. And that, to a large part, was due to the fact that it was built on the foundation of betting sponsorships. Betting sponsorships obviously are pretty ubiquitous throughout the Counter-Strike scene, driving $2, $3, $4 million a year to organizations that are fortunate enough to work with good partners. Being from North America, that has been a competitive disadvantage of ours for years because for regulatory reasons and other things, the larger betting companies generally are hesitant to work with North American teams. Yeah, we have FanDuel in North America. We have DraftKings.
PrizePicks.
Yeah, and we actually do work with PrizePicks for our Counter-Strike Revival series, and we're super grateful for their partnership there. But if you look around the ecosystem, you don't see a lot of the larger international betting firms working in North America. And then secondary, when you look at what has provided any sense of economic stability over the past few years in the Counter-Strike scene, at least for the majority of the tier one organizations, and it's been the league revenue deals. I know a lot of people, including some people on the show, probably don't fall on the same side as I do when it comes to deriving economic stability through such type of deals. But Valve
let me just cut into it because Jason, sorry, because not everybody's going to be familiar with Counter-Strike who's listening to this. So what Jason is referring to, guys, is that there used to be a pseudo partnered league. So kind of, it wasn't totally a closed league like you might be used to seeing in other esports circuits, such as Riot circuits, for example. There were ways to get in via open qualifier, but ESL, particularly with like EPL and Blast, were running leagues that had partner teams. Among them was Complexity. And they were paying revenue share to the partner teams.
This millions of dollars a year as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
This year,
so
Valve
this was providing a solid foundation of revenue for those tier one partners. Now the argument is it's not aspirational. You're gatekeeping the scene, and I totally get all those arguments. For my position, I'm generally worried about economic stability and growing my business, but I totally understand the counter argument that Valve has kind of fallen on. We're like, no, we're not going to do these partner leagues anymore.
This was an announcement that Valve made this year, guys, basically saying that these partner leagues were no longer going to be allowed, which we talked about, I believe, on our State of Counter-Strike last year with Tommy, aka Lurpus. And I think, his take has been publicly that he thinks this is going to be very bad for teams because now there's no incentive for the league structures for Blast and ESL to share the revenue. We'll get to the recent ESL announcement of them attempting to do that in a little bit. But what do you agree with that take, Jason?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where we're at. So I'm just kind of laying the foundation of Counter-Strike from the economics.
Yeah.
Because like we can get into the different rules and the state of CS2 and a lot of these things, and I'm happy to get into that. But it all springs from the economics, because if the economics completely fail, as we've seen in esports winter leagues completely fail, Overwatch, some of these other leagues that have really been struggling. So I'm laying the foundation for kind of where I see the Counter-Strike economics right now, at least from my perspective.
So also when you talk about the partner payments, one other thing that I've heard is going down is sticker revenue for the teams too, which has been
I'm getting there, Monty. I'm getting there. You're fucking spoilering me.
I'll shut up. All right.
Well, I'm laying this foundation. You've got the economics primarily built on betting sponsors, league revenue share, and as everyone knows, making the majors is a massive deal, because when you make a major, you get your sticker in the game. It drives meaningful revenue. It's been like that for years. Teams live and die. Some teams live and die by whether or not they make the major. So it's a very emotional thing. It's you spend a year focusing your efforts in Counter-Strike on making sure you make the major. You do your financial projections. You have to assume that you're going to make the major, and if you don't, that spreadsheet catches on fire. So those three things have kind of been the general underpinning. Of course, you've got sponsorships and those sorts of things, but they're very fickle. In the marketing budgets of many companies have been withdrawn quite a bit as the global macro has changed. Interest rates have gone up. There's a lot of uncertainty just around the different wars around the world, and companies are just not wanting to spend in esports right now. We're a little bit of what I call the redheaded stepchild chucked in the back closet. What I'm hearing now is, generally speaking, across the board, a lot of the betting companies are tired of the arms race that they created, and they're looking to lower the deals as those expire. What I'm also learning now, as we all have this year, is that Valve has a different opinion about the partner leagues. So the entire structure of those has changed, and teams specifically, and thus players, because we're the ones that have to compete for players and pay the players, will no longer be taking part in those revenue share agreements as we have over the past few years. And I'm also sad to report that really since the Paris majors, stickers and the revenue driven by majors has completely fallen off a cliff. The Paris major was a notable exception the last game in CSGO, and the numbers blew off the charts, some 2, 3, 4x of your average major. And therefore, a lot of groups that aren't quite as cynical as I might be started doing their financial budgeting based off this new paradigm of multi-million-dollar stickers.
They did that thing where they acted like it was always going to hit that valuation.
Yeah, and I'm like, there's no way in hell it's always going to hit that.
And they were like, we can buy these players because we'll get it back by getting the stickers. But the problem is, if the stickers is a third of the amount you get, you don't get that back. By the way, even that, put a pin in that, someone, because that's one topic no one ever brings up. One of the maddest things, I'm sure Rich will have a take on later, is we still still do the stickers. And bro, me and you know what? Fuck it. Let's just do this one now as a sidebar. Richard, one of the maddest things ever is me and you lived through this in football, mate. You know, in football, famously, when you're a boy, you want the newest jersey, don't you? If you're the Newcastle fan, you want yours. I want my fucking Robbie Fowler Liverpool jersey. But famously, when you go to your mum, if you're not a rich kid, you go, the new season's out. When she goes to the shop, you better just get the money from her home, because if she goes to the shop and she sees that shirt looks almost identical to last season's shirt, but it costs £50, she's going to go, you've already got that shirt. Now, the problem with the stickers to this day is they are the same logo. They don't even, they maybe have like a slight outline, or they might put, you know, something about Shanghai or something. It's the logo. So all you do is just buy the Na'vi logo 15 times. Now, listen, even the biggest Na'vi fan ever eventually gets bored of that. Like, it's just, the problem is, it doesn't even, I even think that part's just a weird one. I don't know why we're leaving that one. Like, isn't that obvious? It should just have something unique. Like, I was even saying, by the way, you can even do a digital aspect. You could have a component where you buy the sticker and it makes a clip play of the team lifting a trophy or something, or fucking frack highlight or something. But I think that's mad that we're expecting people. What we're saying is, if you're a fan of CS, you can support us by just buying almost an identical logo again. Like, that's like, you fucking actually remember that famous saying, you can shave a sheep many times, you can skin it only once. You're not giving us a chance. Like, no one wants those stickers, bro.
Yeah, I was really hoping they were gonna
It's a bummer, isn't it?
put the whatchamacallit on the weapon. My brain just stopped working.
The charm.
The charm for the teams.
We
and
had
tweeted
this
that
with
out,
gloves
but
when gloves
that
were
didn't happen.
introduced. Like, why aren't the teams getting customizable gloves and stuff? And it's like, I mean,
I would have sold, because think about it, if I've got all the logos already, then of course I'm going to buy the gloves. That's the next thing to buy as a fan.
Exactly. And it's a win for Valve because they make more money, right? New products to sell. It's kind of a win-win. But we saw sticker revenues decline Paris to Copenhagen by 75%-ish, and it depends which capsule. Some
the diminishing
better.
returns on stickers are actually insane.
In China, from what we are seeing, I mean, it's still ongoing. It's probably going to be 30 to 40% less than Copenhagen, and it's still ongoing.
So compared to
it's abysmal.
last, it might be something like a tenth of what the actual stickers were, something insane. As you said, people absolutely at the end of 2023, Jason, definitely went to investors and said, "Hey, look, if between the partner money, which we talked about is going,
100%.
and the stickers, we can literally. I want $3 million to go make a super team, and then it's going to turn out you might get like $1 million back or something crazy."
100%. So that's just kind of, laying out the basics of where I see it. And like I said, long term, I remain an optimist. I think the thesis of esports and the eyeballs and the value of the demographic has not decreased. We just haven't figured out how to properly monetize it. But right now, and heading into the next, call it 12 to 18 months, I think we're going to see a fairly sharp correction for Counter-Strike. That's going to see some orgs drop Counter-Strike. Some Counter-Strike orgs just go out of business. I think player salaries and buyouts are going to correct to be more in line, I guess, with the other esports that we've seen around esports winter. We've kind of had our little cave with a nice little fire in Counter-Strike due to the things that I just mentioned, and the fire is slowly going out. So I do think the next year and a half is going to be a pretty difficult time for Counter-Strike. Will Counter-Strike survive? Yes, absolutely. But I do think we're gonna be seeing a market correction that's going to affect everyone in the ecosystem. I'm optimistic that we'll be able to figure it out as we have in the past, but definitely a bit bearish on the economics of the Counter-Strike scene for the next 18 months.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing either, because I mean, obviously this was really inflated. And there have been, basically, like you're saying, all of the economic situations have changed or lowered. But that doesn't mean that you can't run a healthy business around this. It's just that the players may end up deriving more of their income from prize money potentially, rather than the vast salaries.
Almost certainly that is what the other angle that people won't realize is, in theory, prize money for players is the thing going to go crazy in 2025, because, for example, PGL's already said they're doing $1 million tournaments, which is the prize pool of the major. So in theory, imagine a world where, like, if you're a pro player, if people even match that with the clones and the kind of eights, you might have like 10 chances at like $1 million, like $500,000 first place or something. So the prize money now is going to go crazy, which, by the way, does infer what you said, Monty. As someone from from League, you can appreciate this, because I can tell you, even though Lurpus is a die-hard Counter-Strike person, he hates prize money, because his logic is, League did it right. They already give up all the salary. It's like sports. Why would you then give them the prize money as well? It's like, that at that point, you're just giving all the money to the pro player, like the team's not getting anything. Which is it? Either you give them the high salary, or you say, play for the money, and it's an entrepreneur poker type world, you know. At the moment in CS, we do both, and we have less money in the first place.
Prize money only helps the broader ecosystem if it allows the organizations to lower salaries and invest those dollars in other ways to grow their brand, to grow their following, whatever that might be. Prize money generally goes 80-90% to the players, which is great for the players. But if there's not a better spreading of the money that's being invested into an overall ecosystem, and you're starving out the orgs, people are like, why'd that org close, or why'd that org leave this game? It's like, you need to see the whole picture. Like, it's kind of the rising tide doesn't raise all boats if there's an arms race for prize money. And now you've got some of that prize money in the Valve ratings and everything else. I don't think it's a healthy development. I think it's taking a step back. I think we're going back. And that's why I've repeatedly said I am a believer in the structures that we were trying to build. Well, we did build the ESL and Blast. I completely understand the counter arguments. Whether it be, kind of the fact that some people saw it as a walled garden, and I completely understand that, because I've been on the outside of many walls, and some people saw it as gatekeeping. Some people saw it as damaging to the aspirational nature of Counter-Strike as an esport. And we can also get into the removal of the RMRs when we talk about aspiration. But for me, the prize money doesn't solve many issues on the broader scale. I'm happy if my players are making a ton of money, they're happy or whatever. But if orgs start going out of business and there's less opportunities, there's less academies, there's less programs like what we're doing with the Prize Picks Revival Cup, because the economics of the esport don't make sense. You've got a small generation of players that are going to buy a couple Porsches and go out and have a hell of a good time, but the esport itself and the longevity of it suffers.
Yeah, I mean, I got some thoughts on this. I mean, so first of all, on the gloves and the charms thing, I look like there's I know exactly why Valve won't do it. A lot of people frame it as being like an obvious decision that they should do, because then they make money. And you're right, they make money. They would make a ton of money off it. But they look at the bigger picture of the skins economy, which long term makes them more money. And when you understand that, like, from any case that contains a glove skin, you have a 0.26% chance of getting one. And that includes the dog shit ones that are worth less than $100. What they're trying to do is drive the overall scarcity of gloves up, because what we know from all of the studies, and, Activision Blizzard have this as well with their skins, is that if people see a skin in a game, I'm sure you've played a game of CS where some fucking utter loser cretin is saying, drop me your gun so I can have the skin and I will trade it for my non-skin. Like, these worst thing that ever happened to CS. Whatever, anyway. The problem is, if you've got the Cloud9, the Complexity, the FaZe gloves that I bought directly from the store, I have the glove skin box ticked out of all of the skins I can have from all of the games. So I'm not going to open a case looking for a glove skin. I've got mine. I bought mine.
It would be like letting people buy the knife, basically. Right, I see.
Yes, exactly. So listen, great idea. Makes everyone a ton of money. But overall, what does it do to the skins economy? It kind of wrecks the entire premise of the scarcity of items. Gloves are about as rare as knives. The non-stat track knives. That's kind of like where they've been placed in the skins economy overall. So that's point number one. The other point, to Jason's point about prize money, is I agree. I think one of the interesting developments was, it was always a given back in the day. Players got 100%. But that was before North American owners fucked the salary paradigm in every hole, like, just made them airtight. It just doesn't even make sense. Like, I get 50 grand a fucking month to play mediocre CS, and I get to keep 95% of the prize money, 90% of the prize money. That's completely insane.
To the players who then also would go, and I'm not doing media.
Exactly, which is why it's always been a bugbear of mine. But again, I don't blame the players. Players are by and large morons. And even if they weren't morons and you dangle a
Poker
carrot
face,
of...
Jason. Poker face during this whole segment, bro.
Yeah. Ignore everything I say. I do not speak. I'm also going to criticize North American owners in a moment. But
Not Jason, though.
But present company
Yeah,
is
there you
most
go.
certainly excluded. But if you dangle the carrot of a ton of fucking money to someone, moron or not, they are going to get theirs. And actually, one of the more destructive forces, bizarrely, in this ecosystem of ours has been the agents who think they are negotiating for soccer players, not Counter-Strike players. And they negotiate long contracts that don't behoove the players for fat salaries that don't behoove the ecosystem. And in that, they're also saying, we better be getting all of our sticker money plus a share of the organization's sticker money plus a decent cut of the prize money. And this is simply not sustainable. Now, to that point, I will say, fuck these North American team owners that have come into CS with this. It's a weird combination of, on the one hand, they're not here in earnest. Their intentions are rapacious by nature. But equally as well, they are sort of looking at it like from not profitability, but also they want to kind of have it all make sense. They want the glory to propel the organization to new heights and cash out on that success. And so what they've essentially done, what's broken all of Counter-Strike, all of esports since we welcomed North American owners with VC money into the space and said spend, is that they pay whatever they have to get whatever they think works. And they don't know anything because they are fucking overprivileged morons. Many of them don't even have a decade of experience in the space, and they just think, me buy good player, me overpay good player win me trophy, sponsor pay me for trophy win. That is their brain. That is your brain on NA Esports. And by the way, none of them could spot a good player if their lives depended on it. So we are paying mediocre shite 40 to 50 grand a month. And this is why, by the way, I've just said it many times. I used to lament the death of NA Esports, or back when it was a theoretical. Now I ask ourselves, why do we need them? That's where I've fallen, because unfortunately, for the most part, they are bad for the wider industry. They pump up the money globally, and then it's like you look at something like Mykles, where it's just a bunch of Mongolian kids that have stuck together, worked hard, been coached effectively, and they're getting top 8 at a major. No more excuses, NA. Fuck off. I'm done with you.
Their whole team probably makes less than like the biggest player in NA. You know what I mean?
I think
that entire team is probably paid less than exactly a star.
You perfectly describe one of the biggest problems in esports. There's no barrier of entry. And during the investor-fueled years, call it 2015 to 2022, it was whoever would pay the most. And things absolutely got out of control. A lot of times, I'll have candid conversations with friends, and they'll be like, back in the day, you guys would win everything. Lately, you guys aren't on the finals of the majors or whatever, and it's just like, why not, Mike? Because I'm trying to fucking build a business that's going to last another 20 years.
Yeah.
Could I go out and raise a few $1,000,000 and go hire all this all-star team? And yeah, probably, but that isn't really the economically intelligent thing to do. Again, your first order, second order, third order consequences of things. And I think you hit the nail on the head. And Monty said this earlier, where, market corrections and bubble pops are actually good. And we saw that with the internet back in the day. Holy shit! I don't know if you guys are old enough to remember the .com bowl.
Yeah, we were there.
The Super Bowl, where every damn commercials, pets.com, ants.com, tires.com, like every damn .com, and then the whole market exploded. That out of that, we've got some really big, successful internet-based companies, obviously. And I am still of the opinion that the ones who can survive market corrections like this will succeed, but we're always clawing an uphill battle because we're in a sport with no barrier of entry. There's no buying an NFL franchise or, a soccer, football club over in Europe to where now we can start negotiating a good faith for what are the salary caps? How do we split revenue with players? It's just been a mass arms race, whoever can raise the most money and spend the most money. And that's inflated everything to where I saw a comment in in the chat, it's absolutely not the player's fault. Like if I was in their shoes, I would absolutely do the same thing.
Gotta get the bag,
50
man.
grand a month, and I want 90%. Like, why would I not? But
I'd also
doesn't
like to think they could understand how to
lasting
offer additional
ecosystem
value.
create.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm not saying the player's completely, guilt-free of it by any means, but I also understand if I was that age and I'd worked that hard, I would soak it for all it was worth.
Sure. Yeah.
As well. So, but yeah, I think heading forward on the economics, I think it's going to be challenging, but a lot of times challenging is good, and it washes away things that need to be washed away. Let the bubble pop, and there's still a lot of people that genuinely do care about the scene that I think are going to do their best to remain involved. We're certainly one of them. And see what happens on the other side. But I definitely do have concerns about the next, call it, year and a half, 2 years. And that time frame is we're kind of realigning how things are done, and Valve has stepped up with some of the new rules. And sometimes I think Valve doesn't think of those second order, third order consequences, because they're just like, oh, well, these team leagues, everyone doesn't have a part. We're just going to wipe that away. It's like, that's fine. The analogy I like to use is, let's say you're a small business. You've got some liquid trading stock and you want to acquire another company. Okay, well, we're just going to use some stock and go buy that company, because then we don't have to dip into cash reserves to buy this company. Now we've got another company, but all the founders and all the employees or whatever get our stock. And the first order consequences look like, great, we just added a company to our portfolio. This is awesome. Without realizing the second order and third order consequences. Now all those new people who just got your stock go to the market and they sell your stock. So what happens to your stock price? Your stock price falls. Well, that's not good. That's the second order consequence. What's a third order consequence? If your stock price falls, the company now can't raise any additional capital to grow and scale the company at the same price. And depending if you're on an exchange, it can be very problematic, is what I'm saying. So Valve sometimes makes these decisions being like, oh, we don't like that. That's bad. So we're just going to come in, change the whole thing. Maybe the first order consequence is good, but you don't see the second and third order consequences. And I think we've seen that a lot around esports. And I definitely think we're going to see that heading out in Counter-Strike. And I thought that was really interesting, the point you made about the gloves, and I think that is a really astute observation. But I do think that if Valve's going to come in and make sweeping changes without understanding the second, third order consequences for all the people in the ecosystem and all the different entities, we're going to be in trouble if they don't come up with new ways to monetize.
Well,
maybe
exactly.
It'll be with charms, or maybe it'll be something else.
And that's the counterpoint.
But your esport won't last forever if you just walk haphazardly through, being like, making decisions that affect the entire ecosystem and sweeping unilateral kind of moves.
And that's the counterpoint. Why isn't there in the skins boxes that you've got, M4, AK, AWP, gloves, charms, why aren't they inventing something specifically to show loyalty to an esports brand? Why can't there just be an esports slot? Whatever that might look like. It could have been gloves, that's taken. It could have been charms, that's taken. Pretty sure Valve can invent something else. And that just feels like, in Dota, you get you get a bunch of in-game cosmetic effects, like when you TP out and stuff. Around about every major and every TI, you can buy a kind of capsule that gives you stickers of the players and everything else. And then when I TP, it'll show the fucking complexity logo or whatever in the animation as I go back to base or whatever. So why can't there be something for like that for CS is the question. And the answer is there absolutely can. It's just weird that charms, which nobody wants and are a fucking eyesore, I
also think that those are turned on in the major as well. It's just distracting. Yeah. It's annoying. Well, it can even cover up things on the fucking screen. It could be a little guy in the background, the charm covers. It's nightmare fuel.
Listen, for me, I would just Valve would never agree to this, obviously. But if I'm running a tournament, skins are default. There just aren't any. Yeah. I don't want to have to negotiate the fucking raft of problems that come with players putting racist names on a skin, inappropriate fucking slogans on a bomb.
Thorin has a small dick, that's just rude. Private information.
Yeah, private information told in confidence, right? No, but also, I mean,
I was called that day.
Why is Donk like a 17-year-old got a bomb called "Blow Me No Hands"? Like, I don't need to see that.
Read the room. What country are you from, mate? Read the room. Just put. Maybe I've
was it rain?
called.
Was it rain and not
No,
Donk?
no, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
What country is he
Whatever.
from? You know,
Yeah,
I wouldn't have some about bombs if I was a crazy.
Let me shift gears.
Go for it.
Sorry, Rich, are you done? I didn't mean
No. Well, I'm just saying, like, there's room in the game for something that is esports exclusive, that also makes Valve money, but also makes the teams money, and also makes the fans feel they can engage and show support to their CS teams. The fact that Valve haven't created that shows shows what we all know, that they don't like the orgs. They've never liked orgs. They've never thought orgs were necessary to the ecosystem.
100%.
Which is why they
I don't even want to get started on that.
Which is why they did
that is one thing I've never understood as well, because it's the same with all the major devs as far as I can tell. I don't follow Rocket League, so I'm talking about like Valve, Blizzard, Riot, etc. They always seem to treat it. I've always told Monty this analogy. They treat it like it's that classic movie from the 80s, The Wizard. And what happens is every kid just tries to play this video game, and the major is like a tournament where the best get to meet and go, wow, I can't believe it, I'm at the World Champion. Will I be the best at Mario 2 or whatever? And they don't seem to realize. Think about what we just said earlier on. The people who pay for this to be a sport, the salary, the housing, that's the fucking team. And you're basically saying, why do I need the team? It's like, because these guys can't just sit at home and go, oh, I won $1 million. Now I can invest in all my gear. They have to have all that stuff already to compete. And for some reason, the game devs keep acting like the team is the parasite, but the team loses the money, they make the money, and then the player makes the money. The player and the game dev just spit roast the fucking team. And at the end go, what did you even bring to this equation? My ass and my fucking mouth. Again, Jason, be very careful when you're jumping on these.
Well, it's also, I mean, you can prove this just by looking at the Dota circuit, because the existence of the Compendium and TI basically disincentivized players from having team structures because they have all of the power. Because effectively, the economics of Dota have always been that it makes no sense for the team to pay the players a meaningful enough salary when a player will just be like, I would rather not do sponsorship deals because I know in my heart I'm going to make top 8 at the next TI, and that's going to be 3 times as much money as you're paying me anyway. So fuck you, team. Fuck all your deliverables. And what this did for many years was cause the inmates to run the asylum in the Dota scene, where basically the teams were just held hostage by the players at all possible times. Players refused to do any marketing exercises. They refused to stream. They refused to do fucking anything. And it has been a disaster because they also refuse to be coached, which is another like giant problem in Dota, where they reject all structure, reject all authority. And I would personally argue that this has actually held Dota back from being played at a level that it could be, basically, because the teams have been so sidelined in the entire history of Dota. And, you know, that is the proof right there, because Valve knows this and they want this to happen.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, at a high level, you know, there's definitely been bad actors on teams. That's no secret. There's definitely been people that have kind of been grifters and try to take advantage. But there's also a lot of good people and a lot of good organizations that have survived the test of time. And you can't help but feel over and over again. And I got to be careful if I call it specific instances. People get all bent out of shape. The developers treat teams like shit. They act like we bring absolutely nothing to the ecosystem. They don't see us up at 2 a.m. talking a kid off a ledge who's having a hard time in his life. They don't see all the work that goes into training. They don't see all the effort that goes into building the facilities and taking care of these young people, who many of whom aren't quite mature enough to make adult decisions. They don't see when we're financially educating them, we're getting them. They don't see a lot of the good that the
I'll give you one that no one thinks of. It's an extreme example, but NIP let Device sit on a bench getting a whole salary for an entire year because he was having like mental health problems and all sorts of things. Like, right, in a normal job, if we're all entrepreneurs and these are startups, I have to fire you, mate. I've got to make money off the, like, some of these teams have gone way above and beyond the call. They haven't all been super cynical on their bottom line. That's definitely not the case, Jason.
Yeah, there's a lot of value that teams bring, and we've seen that in traditional sports for years and years, but time and time again, and I could rattle off 24 examples across, many different esports. The teams are squeezed out, the teams are disrespected, teams are disregarded, and it is demoralizing at times, and it's certainly frustrating. that the games that we participate in, that we help grow the IP of, time and time again, just kind of kick us in the corner and don't give a shit. But I do want to shift back to CS a little bit, and I want to ask your opinions. Shift gears a little bit away from the economics for those in the show that might not be so interested in that. What do you guys think of the new Valve structure for majors and getting rid of RMRs?
So let me define this really quick. So for those of you who don't know, RMRs were the previous qualification structure for the majors. And the idea now is that Valve moving forward has created their own independent international ranking system. And that ranking system will be used not only to draw invites for the major, but to draw invites to many tournaments around the world. If you guys want more information about the process, go back to our Four Horsemen with Messioso that we did, where we go more into in-depth about that process. But there's also the upcoming news about the majors that this hasn't been announced, but the rumors are they are going to be switching to a 32-team major instead of the current 24-team model, which will mean that there are going to be, 3 16-team Swiss phases now, which is kind of insane in my opinion. But maybe less insane than the RMR structure that preceded this major, Richard, because you were doing this for forever prior to the major. So I'd love to hear your opinion, having just gone through like the RMR tangle, because it is very, from the outside, from my perspective, right? This process is inscrutable, man. Like it is crazy complicated. And I think for the average fan, it's very, very confusing. And do you think that this new RMR-less structure is going to be better to watch for most fans?
Right. So let's just start with this. What was the RMR's major contribution to CS history? So first of all, the RMRs, back when they were what they said they were, which was a regional major qualifier, essentially, right? They used to have a point system that you earned by attending sanctioned events, very similar to WCS and StarCraft. And if you finished, well in 3 events that were given this denomination, you would score points that would choose your position in the major. For some reason, we turned these into just basically qualifiers, and there was a qualifier for the RMR as well. Right. So first of all, we didn't have a means, because Valve didn't have their own ranking system. We never had a means really to just choose outright, 32 teams, let's say. We just never had that. And now we do. So what we ended up with was these ghastly open qualifiers to the RMR itself, which is where all of the problems happened. And what do I mean by problems? Very rare, but it happened. Teams would cheat. Just dog shit teams from the Balkans like you've never heard of. They're just cheating their tits off. They don't give a fuck. It's their one shot at maybe getting into an RMR. And by the way, it wasn't just obscure Balkan teams. We know from the CIS qualifier, that fucking Akuma team. I don't give a fuck. I'll stand on business on that one. They cheated. They used a radar hack and cheated. They went from being the 153rd best team in the world to beating Na'Vi and neutralizing Simple and giving him his worst rating of the year in his career since he played for Flipside. They drew with Gambit, who were the number 2 team in the world. They beat Virtus Pro, who were 5th at the time. What are we doing? We know what's going on. We got footage of the dudes doing this, while they're clutching over here. We just had to tank that one on the chin. Everyone knew they fucking cheated. Everyone knew that a rogue fucking Star Ladder employee or whatever fucking company ran that event leaked them a clean feed, and they cheated. And in the event, and 2 of the managers eventually got for it, and a player got banned. Right. So first of all, you by not having those qualifiers, you reduce the desire to cheat, because you've got to play all year round now to get your invite and earn your spot, because there's no RMR. Next up, the fucking TSM. Just eat my fucking asshole from beyond the grave, you fucking clown org. Will you just go away? What even are you now? Can anyone explain to me what TSM are? I don't. What do they do?
I mean,
They keep
joke
saying they're
is-
going to get back into League of Legends. Is the
in
joke.
Counter-Strike,
It's
clearly,
been 2 years.
Basically, in Counter-Strike, if people don't know, TSM quite clearly actually tried to exploit the current situation and just min-max teams to get through the RMR, to get into the major, to get the stickers. And the difference is, we were talking earlier about people in good faith signing players for millions. Like, I tell you what, you might laugh at Astralis or Falcons or something. They spent millions to try and make those team Liquid, all these squads that they want to get through. TSM looks like they rock up, pay the minimum amount, minute as possible, to then hope they fluke, get the sticker, and then max it, and then maybe they'll sign a player. Like, after you've given them the millions, maybe then they'll sign someone good. Like, that's the opposite to what you were trying to do if we're trying to build this space. So no, I agree. In CS, TSM has been very cynical, mate.
Let's be absolutely clear. I even said on the major broadcast as a joke to like Blair, I think it was, I said like, when they didn't qualify through the RMRs, like how long is it going to take for them to announce they're dropping the team? And I said, give it a week. And they did it in
2 weeks or 3 weeks or something.
They did it in 3.
There you go.
They did it in fucking 3. Like, just Reggie, all of you people, just fuck off. Leave our game alone. I am sick of it because there is a bigger knock-on effect here, right? Like, remember how when we got rid of the RMRs, all the dickheads came out and said, but you are ruining the dreams, not the precious dreams of the players. Like, players can't just have dreams and make their own team and play well for a year and get to it. The only thing this stops is you fluking your way to a major, which is no way to run a world championship in any sport, by the way, right? Like, it's just a nonsense premise, but not the dreams, right?
Well, the reason why Richard's saying this is because basically the majors had qualifiers, but now it's going to be a point system based off of your consistent performance relative to other teams in your region over the course of the year. And the majors say, we're inviting this many teams from Europe, this many teams from North America, this many teams from Asia Pacific, right? So
when on July 1st, TSM threw money at another failed bedroom organization which has scandals in its history, 0-0 Nation, to get fucking 5 mediocre players together to enter into the major cycle, to enter into the RMR cycle, to fail and then immediately drop them. So what you tell me which is worse? Completely fucking over those players with the promise of a contract when their entire career at your org goes from July to December, right? Or is it worse that if TSM actually qualify for the major and get that sticker money and take that sticker money away from an organization that might actually commit to our space? What's worse?
Well, I would also argue.
I think both are fucking vile, actually.
I think a different, just purely from a excitement standpoint of the circuit as well. One of the things that I really like about the dissolution of the RMRs is that the RMRs obviously were of paramount importance to the teams and the players. But in terms of prestige, it was really nothing, really. So there was not, in my opinion, a lot of hype to watching the MMRs unless you were a big fan of.
It's the sad thing, Monty. Basically, what you're right. It was 2 angles. You would watch for the best teams in the world, and you would just pray, hope they don't slip up and just ruin the whole fucking year. Which, by the way, is terrible. Yeah, it's terrible.
Best of one.
And by the way, that did actually happen once.
Yeah.
Outsiders won IM Rio and did not qualify to Blast Paris. And FaZe, by the way, was barely made it there. And by the way, Cloud9 didn't even make it. It was a top team. So first of all, you essentially just pray that the top team just wins its VO1. So you're not even wanting it to be a good game, by the way. Or the other angle, like you're saying, Monty, is if you're one of those real casuals who just only is here for like drama, you actually want the stupidest teams possible to qualify. You want a team of like some stupid bad fucking like American, like we haven't got anything for the news tonight. Oh, what about is there like a dog that's been adopted by a family and it's back to health now? Like that, you get some team that, by the way, even if they make it, are definitely getting wrecked. Even if they somehow fluke the game and never going to be at another major again, you get that bullshit feel-good story. Except the problem is, as I just said, you very rarely ever do get the feel-good story become Gamer Legion or Apex. Or it tends to just be they qualify, get instantly. That's the team ever put 0-3, they go 0-3. Like the RMR basically was just like, what shit show is this going to be today? No one was tuning in like, this is high-level CS. Let's see how good the team's are. That wasn't what it was.
They also
I'm not going to miss them because I damn near had about 3 heart attacks for those freaking RMRs.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
And don't get me started with best of ones with with
bro.
MR12.
Like if
I could go on a
the
raid.
real format, maybe we can have a different conversation.
Like I'm up in the middle of the night, like sweating, and like
but it's
I
like,
won't miss that at all.
Yeah,
No,
I mean,
this detail as well, Monty. They even did mad shit on the Americas RMRs that Jason kept going through, where they would use Swiss format and have it so you 8 teams, but not 8 teams qualify. So you all can have like 3-2, and then like one team just doesn't qualify, like based on like a tiebreaker or a tiebreaker fact. It was mental, bro. Like they were even using inappropriate formats that didn't make sense for the field size, and then just going like, have at it. And like I was like, your whole year rested on that.
Well, it's also like the RMRs just take up so much time in the calendar, and it feels like, sure, the argument is, well, now the major is going to be longer because you have an extra round of Swiss, but that round of Swiss probably takes a week, maybe.
Oh, yeah.
But these RMRs take weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, and they're being played across all of these different regions, and they're being played at different times, right? Because they have to organize the European RMR, and the people who are organizing that are the same people who are on the NA one, so they have to do it, a week earlier, right? So it's an entire shit show.
They also refused to accept the concept that there has to be a barrier of entry. They took the World Championship of Counter-Strike, and as suggested by Richard, it happened. Literally, randoms, like the joke is, us 4 plus a 5th could have entered that tournament. We would waste everyone's time, including whoever sets up the bracket, and as I said, acting like we are going to qualify over FaZe Clan to this major, and we're playing with major in the FaZe in this major. And by the way, if we decided to just cheat, because in this scenario, imagine we're not people in esports, like if we win the game, lol, joke's on you, I'm in the next round. If we lose and we get exposed as cheaters, well, I'm a random guy. What do I care? It was mental. Like, what I don't get is people, again, this is why I made that silly analogy to the Wizard. People were making out like Donk is secretly just some kid in a bedroom somewhere. We just don't know he's out there. We know who these people are from Face It and from fucking every aspect of, but we've got an enormous pro scene with all divisions. It's like bloody English football. We know everyone who is good. We know all the people. The question is, do the GMs do that? Yeah, but
the only people who didn't know Donk was before Donk became Donk was NIP in that video, if you remember.
Yeah, Threat or whatever it was where he said that. That's true.
And that's a really important comment about the calendar too, because the Counter-Strike calendar, outrageous.
Oh, of course.
So not having to fit all these RMRs into the calendar with all these new tournaments that have been popping up and PGL starting to bring tournaments back, I think that is a big benefit.
I'll come to the calendar,
but it's like,
Jason. I just want to make one more point about why the RMRs fucking suck, and I'm glad they're gone. And this one will be the most controversial of all. It will be the one. This is it, guys.
Is it about drillers?
Yes, of course it is. Okay, of course it is, my sweet Duncan. Right, so here you go, Andrew. Get ready. Clip this. Put this on your shorts. Let's get all the hate views. Let's do it, because we're just cynical, miserable fucks. Don't even get nominated for awards anymore. I'm gonna just tell you this. What is a system where one guy, right? And I'm not, by the way, you know what? I'm not gonna insult Owner Pixel too much. And I'll tell you why I'm not going to, because I too am a narcissist. And I loved that when he posted his most viewed Twitch streamers, I was his #1 viewed Twitch streamer or #2 or something.
He got to you. Okay.
Yeah. He watches me all the time and he really likes me and he doesn't speak ill of me, even though his community are a bunch of fucking rats, right? So anyway, I'm not going to insult him too much, but I am going to say this. There are levels to narcissism. You know, there are levels. You have your red eyes who sit imperious, and some of their replacements, you might say. They sit out there on an island by themselves. And then you have just the common or garden narcissists, egotists, really. Are we even narcissists? I don't know. Probably a question a narcissist would ask. But I'm going to tell you this. If you honestly look at Counter-Strike esports and think that would be a really good vector for me to get my face in a video game I like, you're a right? Like, you could have made, let me tell you all the ways drillers could have been amazing. You could have gone to a region, by the way, that is crying out for support and investment in Asia, and you could have picked a bunch of Chinese youngsters, and you could have offered them salaries and support and supported them through the RMR, and you could have brought
serious question. Do you think Mongols got paid more or less than drillers?
I mean, listen, I am told that drillers actually didn't get paid all that much because it was going to be like a sticker.
They were going to get the sticker money.
They were getting all the sticker money, which, by the way, that's not great either. But anyway, so wouldn't it have been if Ornapixel had like used scouts to go out to the Asian CS region and got like some up and coming Chinese players and said, I'm going to support you, my community's going to support you, let's win this RMR. That would have been sick. I would have been behind that. I would have been like, yeah, fuck me. That's actually turning your audience into a force for good. No, what did he choose to do instead? How can we cynically get non-Asian players into the Asian RMR and potentially deny Chinese players a spot at the Chinese major, the historic Chinese major? This is why it's unforgivable, because Rare Atom got to go, but there was a world where they could have not. And imagine if they'd been denied the opportunity to compete on home soil, historically in Shanghai, because one streamer wanted to put his face as a fucking sticker in the game for the lols. Nah, not my world championship, guys. I actually care about the esports. The fucked up thing about this community is these people elevate people that don't care about the esports. Your Hastros, your 3Clicks, your Ornapixels, they don't care about the competition. They don't care about competitive integrity. They don't care about the history of the game. They don't care about the flow of the tournament. They care about the video game that makes them money. And that's fine, by the way, but let's call it what it is. And that's what it was. And so unfortunately, I was watching that unfold, and it just made me think to myself, I hope there is never a qualifier like this ever again, because that had the potential to be so destructive to the fabric of Shanghai. Now look, obviously I didn't go to China, we all know why, right? But I will say this, nominally, it is a very good thing that we had an Asia in Shanghai after all this time. The Chinese fan base love Counter-Strike. They've been denied events. This was their event. And Ornapixel came this close to denying a Chinese team a spot because of his own narcissism. I can't sign off on that. So, and you shouldn't either if you care about competitive Counter-Strike. If you go... skins, if you're that guy, you're a fucking moron. We should never interact. There should be like it's like when parents go out to Chuck E. Cheese. There's a ball pit you can play in, and the adults are going to have wine and dinner. You know what I mean? That's how we should. Yeah, that's how we should be treating like actual competitive Counter-Strike. Skin cells are the morons in the ball pit. Right? They think they hold esports upright. You don't, by the way. It's all the betting sponsors, all the people who put money in, time in, all the TOs who somehow make it all work. The organizations like, fucking, all the owners run, right? That's what holds it up. You make Valve money. That's what you do. So actually, no, what we're doing is it's in a different stream to what you do. So no, I actually don't fucking support what Ornapixel did at all. And that was the final nail in the coffin. I could have been swayed on the RMR thing till I saw that. That's a joke. That came this close to dangerously derailing the Shanghai major, because if I'm a Chinese fan and I see Rare Atom get knocked out by Drillers, or Drillers take that third place, or whatever scenario could have panned out, I might not tune in. So, nah, fuck that. And there you go, RMRs.
By the way, I'll just add one thing on the RMRs, which is I've always wanted this system to go away because, in my opinion, they did it wrong in two ways. You either do it this way, you don't have regional RMRs, you have qualifiers into one RMR. We had this in 2015, where it's a LAN qualifier to the major, and everyone's allowed through it. I've always given this two examples for that. One is you did have a team called Vox Eminor from Australia, and instead of like I do now, every time to FlyQuest or Greyhound, where I go, you shouldn't even be at the major, you're not as good as anyone from Europe, they went to the RMR and beat real European teams that otherwise I would have said were better. So they qualified. So I didn't say jack shit because they qualified. The other team famously was Fallen's team, Keat Stars or whatever the fuck they were called. They also at the time, everyone would have gone, who gives a shit about this team? You'd never get into it. They not only went there, they made it top 8 at the majors. So they also qualified. So you either do a real qualifier for everyone with no option, like you're saying, to loophole, get through an RMR one or sneak through, or have a team where One of the worst things they ever did, by the way, I'll break this down very briefly, is they made it where the trick that people like Grillers were using, if people don't know, is if you didn't have 3 people from any one region, you can just pick what region. That was the stupidest idea of all time, because the only people who ever did that were people exploiting the rule. There's no such team as a normal semi-pro team that happens to have 2 Asian players, 2 American players, and 1 from Europe. That doesn't exist. That's never existed. It couldn't logistically exist. They stupidly allowed that loophole for many years, and people like Hellraisers actually had the choice to, could we be CIS or are we European today? They could just change their mind depending on how they felt about it. Secondly, what we're moving to now, look, has plenty of downsides, but it is what I've always wanted, which is effectively, if you are like a top 10 team in the world, you're at the major. Well done. You know why? Oh, not because of some weird privilege. You earned it through the circuit. You had like first places and top 4s and top, which also, by the way, values the rest of the circuit. Before we actually for real treated it, like I just said, with the one where outsiders Virtus Pro were the major champions, something like 5 months later, they failed the RMR, didn't get to go to the World Championship. Do you know how stupid a storyline it is when every time you're on the major, you have to go? And of course, our world champions went out in a qualifier that we actually didn't have on the stream right now. But what is that? So, and also, it didn't happen, luckily. But imagine if like the number 1 team in the world had won it. Imagine like a Prime Astralis had just woken up. By the way, this could happen. Device, breaks his arm when he's coming down the stairs. Someone has flu or something. What if they'd have walked to one of those RMRs? I mean, we didn't have it back then, top 8 qualified. But imagine they'd had an RMR and they have the worst 3 days of their life and don't even make the major. What would that year be when the whole year's about Astralis? Then the major's just them sat at home like, oh, well, didn't win a couple of BO1s. Well, that's nothing. So to me, in my opinion, now what we're doing is sports. Like, they don't, by the way, for Wimbledon, go, you know what? Wimbledon's coming up. Forget the rest of the circuit. You're all in a massive qualifier. What's that, Federer? You lost to a random person you never heard of. Won't be seeing you at the fucking Grand Slam then. No, he knows as long as I'm like something like top 100, I'm automatically seeded, mate. Because I participate. Again, Valve, this isn't a one-off world championship with all the people. We're searching in nooks and crannies. What this is we're trying to qualify the best teams in the world to your world championship, then play out to find out who the world champion is. It isn't X Factor. It isn't Britain's Got Talent. We're not searching for some crazy talent out there. We're trying to figure out who out of the best ones deserves to battle each other at the World Championship. And spoiler, like I just said, it's almost never going to be one of the fluke teams that ever can have a relevance on the major. They can only ruin the major and or someone else's major. And that is not something I sign up for. I want to see the best teams play. So even though this has issues, we're moving closer to something I'd prefer, where you just get in the top teams there.
And it's not like nothing's going to replace this. What we're going to get is additional PGL or ESL or Blast events that are going to be more fun to watch, that are going to contribute to the qualification for the major itself. So, Jason, what's your thoughts on this? Because I know you brought the topic of conversation up, but you haven't opined.
No, I think, both Richard and Thorin made very, very good points that I agree with. And, like I joked earlier, I'm not going to miss the heart attacks of the RMRs. I think my concerns would stand mainly around how the calculations are done. And I think the Valve rankings in general need some work. They've come a long ways. But if we're going to use this type of system, which in some respects does threaten the aspirational nature of the game that they're trying to achieve, right? The good thing of the RMRs was, and I'm probably going to get shut down, but it reminds me back of the CPL days, where if a kind of lesser team got hot, you never know where they could end up. And that provided a very aspirational thing, whether it's realistic or not. Going to these type of events.
At a time, Jason.
Yeah. Complexity Redemption on YouTube. but no, overall, I definitely agree with this.
You could have some young plucky team come along, good-looking guy, nice build. He could have been a football player, but his chance is gone. Now he's got his team there. He's slapping people's heads down to get the pistols. That's what CS is about. Can we get back to that, guys? Can we remember the spirit of American Counter-Strike?
And we had freaking BO1s back then too, so I guess I shouldn't complain too much. But I think they need to work a little bit on how the Valve rankings work, but I think that'll continue to develop. And I won't miss the RMRs, and I won't miss how much time they take off a very busy calendar either.
You know what, Monty? I feel like I need to say something else, which is the days are getting shorter, much like gamers' patience to prepare their own meals. And at the end of the day, Mum's tendies don't really fit the nutrition profile you need to be at your best, getting your raid on, acing the opposition, or carrying that team fight. So become a winner with a chicken dinner by considering trying Factor meals. Stay energized with America's #1 ready-to-eat meal delivery service. You know, FaZe Clan, they weren't much of a factor until the end of the year, as they were absent in terms of eating at the big tournaments until they came on strong at the very end. Well, with Factor, you can eat at the end of the year and throughout with guaranteed quality delivered month after month. JKS for Nexa, not my idea of a good deal, but they wanted a more comfy vibe apparently. Well, there's no sacrificing quality for convenience with Factor. Weekly menus offer ways to treat yourself to a restaurant-like meal experience with gourmet plus dishes that feature premium proteins and seasonal sides like broccolini, leeks, and asparagus. I wouldn't eat any of that, but whatever. You can just order some else if you want. How do you?
I would. Oh, that sounds great. Thorin doesn't eat vegetables.
How does truffle butter filet mignon and garlic herb roasted barramundi sound? I can barely say it, but it's mouth-watering, right? Don't settle for bad snacks that leave you feeling unsatisfied and bloated. Factor has all kinds of add-ons like wings and protein shakes and juices. If you're Vitality, you had no choice to become the team of the year because they only ended up with one plate to eat. But with Factor, your choices are empowered in a way Zemu could only dream of. Choose from 6 menu preferences to help you manage calories, maximize protein intake, avoid meat. I'll tell you what, they certainly did avoid, or simply eat well balanced, unlike G2. Donk got the major, but you know what? For much of the year, people speculated on how much support he really had. Well, because Factor's meals are chef prepared and dietitian approved, you're going to love not only how Factor's meals taste, but also how they support your goals. Now, my shot at snacks right there might have seemed cheap, but Factor is cheaper than takeout and dining out. Put the money you save towards holiday shopping or reaching your financial goals. Now, I don't feel guilty about taking a shot at a legend though, and you won't need to feel guilty either, because find guilt-free comfort foods like home-style chicken and gravy, loaded mashed potato pork chop, feel-good vegan options like sweet potato and chickpea curry, and globally inspired flavors like Peruvian shrimp and red pepper Corley grits. Now, you know, Mercy Monty was at his best in the arena, and you can stay on your A game with quality ingredients you can trust and quality you can taste in every one of Factor's fresh, never frozen meals. Frozen, he was shit at the major. This isn't even frozen. Stop misusing your time like Taz wastes timeouts on G2, and use your time more efficiently during these dark months. Let Factor take shopping, prepping, cooking, and cleaning up off your daily list of things to do. Head to factormeals.com/50horsemen and use the code 50horsemen. Don't read it out really slowly to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code 50horsemen at factormeals.com/50horsemen to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping while your subscription is active. And I can see that some people here's boxes have absolutely gone. So there you go.
That might have been your best ever. Very, very good.
I cannot believe you just did that, bro.
How long did it take you to write that, man?
It wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. Yeah.
Thorin's a little CMO over here. Look at this.
The single best ad read we've ever done.
There's the state of competitive
You
Counter-Strike.
guys in the chat
ad read.
have to go
Exactly.
check out
Yeah.
these meals after that. Like
Yeah.
that is like
Jesus.
All right.
God,
Thank you.
Man,
Thank
an
you,
Academy Award. That was,
Holy shit. That
and
was
the
like
segue too is just like smooth.
that was
in and
like the man great.
Listen,
It
I've never
that
done
was-
SNL, so that was my version. That was my opening speech, wasn't it? With all the sellout, just all the sponsor reads as well.
That was awesome.
that was insane, bro. That's the best ad read ever. Like,
That was
Well, the
awesome.
thing is, I agree. In many ways, I did cook, but with Factor meals, you won't need to. It's already cooked anyway.
And to be the business guy on the show,
Oh,
like
my
I
God.
constantly try to stress to fans, like when a company comes in and supports a product like this, support the freaking product.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, this is not
Always.
rocket
Shout out anyone who
science.
Always.
orders it. Yes, shout out anyone who
People
orders
get their esports for free on Twitch. It's very inexpensive to attend. In fact, like I know
Oh,
Richard's
you'll-
gone off about this, and I'd like to go off sometime too. One of the biggest
do it.
problems to the growth of esports is just too many people consume it for free and don't contribute back.
Of course.
So if you've enjoyed this show,
Don't
support their sponsor.
Oh,
Factormeals.com.
We could play.
Buy something. Use the code.
Exactly.
Fuck's
Horsemen.
sake.
As Thorin said, do not read it.
Oh, it's 50
slowly.
horsemen.
50 horsemen.
50
Sorry,
Horsemen. Link in the chat.
Yes.
Support their
50
sponsors.
horsemen.
Like if you don't support the sponsors that support esports,
Great.
I don't know.
I'll tell you as well. It does make a difference. I'll never forget seeing the fucking CEO of Arby's, his eyes lighting up as the fans at E-League chanted Arby's, Arby's, and he was like, "Wow, we've never seen a crowd chant for a sponsor before." So there you go.
We don't work with E-League anymore. Probably not getting sponsored by Arby's. A really dark moment though was when I was saying to Richard, we keep doing all these Arby's ads. Where's the Arby's at? I want to try something. They were like, you don't. And then I actually tried it. It was right.
They're curly fries. I will defend.
Listen, curly fries are legit. Curly fries are legit.
Yeah.
But it's like.
Yeah.
All I'm
Listen,
going to say is I had a roast beef sandwich. I didn't know what type of roast beef I was. That's actually an inappropriate joke, but whatever. That's what I was like.
No,
I didn't know what type
not that
I was eating. Yeah, exactly.
I know where you're going with that.
Yeah, don't worry about that. Listen.
I mean, we were in Atlanta. There's more strip clubs per square inch there than any other state.
Yeah, it's very much a magic city. I agree.
Oh,
all right.
man.
So anyway, moving on.
Bring it back.
I don't know how you segue back out of that. That was
Your curly fry. Well, no, wait.
I have to rein in the degeneracy here all the time, Jason. I'm used to it. But I do want to point out, we do complain all the time, and you will have a laugh at this, Jason. I tweeted the other day revealing that Riot was going to allow betting sponsors for League and Valorant teams. And not everybody, many fans were irate. How could you do this, Riot Games? You absolute saint of a company. How could you possibly allow gambling within your esports? By the way, it's not going to be on the broadcast. And as I said in my tweets, won't even be allowed on team uniforms, right?
Yeah.
But the fans, and then I tweeted, well, you guys aren't paying for it. If you guys were paying for it, then maybe these decisions wouldn't have to be made.
I mean, also,
that's just how it goes.
The people who made that decision just paid 100 million because they couldn't leave women alone, for fuck's sake. No.
Yeah, I mean, I think
the Saudi crossover is huge between Riot executives and the Saudi royal family.
Well,
I think the conversation, I think the overall conversation of betting in regards to esports is definitely a very interesting one. I absolutely believe that I understand both sides of that argument. There are some nefarious companies that have come through and done damage specifically to Counter-Strike. And betting in general, I think, has always been a bit controversial if you get back to puritanic kind of moral values. But I also think that we need to live in the real world. You look at any sports, like here in the United States, the NFL, viewership and engagement is largely fueled now by either fantasy or just straight Vegas type of gambling. And if you look at all like soccer, football in Europe, like, come on, you think the engagement, the fan viewership numbers and everything would be the same if they didn't have bets on the matches? Being pragmatic, I think that it's good for the economics of esports to engage with reputable iBetting gambling partners. And whether, I understand if someone says, hey, I had a family member that had a problem gambling, so I have a moral opposition to that. Like, I respect that. I understand that. But we also have to be pragmatic and live in the real world. And like I said earlier, we've been at a perpetual disadvantage to, say, the European Counter-Strike team. I talked to the CEOs, and I know some of the numbers, and I know for a fact that some of my direct competitors are making between $2 and $4 million a year from their betting partnerships, of which I don't have one. And anybody who claims any objectivity or can be pragmatic on any level understands that's a big problem for me because I'm competing for the same players. There's no salary caps. I have to be competitive with my salaries with the terms of my contracts. So if I'm not engaging that ecosystem, whether by choice or just by where I live, making it much more difficult with the regulations around America, I'm at a perpetual disadvantage in the game that is most near and dear to me. So while there are very valid objections, and just last night, CoffeeZilla had a thing out about the skins gambling companies, and Monarch went live on Kick and was mentioning you, Richard. I don't know if you saw it, but there's drama.
He's always mentioning me for some reason. I don't know.
There's been bad actors in the past. But I also think we need to start, as a community, really respecting the economics. A lot of our demographic are no longer kids. Like, a lot of our fans come through the headquarters, and they bring their kids. Like, I've been a Complexity fan for 15 years, and here's my son, and I want to get him a shirt. It's like, we need to start figuring out better ways to monetize the audience so we could continue to grow and scale the business. And I think betting is here. It's not going anywhere. I think it's only going to continue to get larger. And I think we're just being naive if we think esports can continue to grow without it in some way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agreed.
Speaking, I want to turn back to the economics really quickly because just a couple of days ago we had the ESL Pro Tour update for 2025, and as you mentioned earlier, Jason, this is, the loss potentially of the partnership revenue from entities like ESL and Blast is weighing heavily on the minds of the pro teams right now, and as part of this, they are trying to help by distributing money directly to clubs via prize money within these tournaments, right?
Yeah.
So they've announced a full circuit where we have basically all of their tournaments are going to be $1 million at minimum in terms of prize money. There's also going to be at some of the smaller events, which I find to be an interesting incentive that they've set up, because in the past, teams have not wanted to potentially play in the non-Katowice / Cologne tournaments because they're more difficult to travel to, or they're not seen as important by the teams. So as opposed to Cologne and Katowice have the largest player prize pools, the largest club prize pools are being tied to IEM Dallas, IEM Chengdu, the unannounced IEM Spring event, and EPL, as opposed to Katowice and Cologne, where they just know the teams and the players are going to be participating because of the prestige of those events. So when you look at what the announcements have been from ESL, what's your takeaway as a team? Are you...
No, that's a great question. That's a great question. First, just let me say, the older I get, the less fucks I give, but I'm still running a brand and have people relying on their paychecks, and we still need to operate in the global esports ecosystem. So I always have to approach these types of...
I mean, it's better than nothing, right? Because realistically,
carefully.
ESL didn't have to do any of this.
Let me answer your question first. First, let me just say that I think some of the, and I don't mean this too derogative, because there's a lot of good people that work for some of these organizations, and I don't want them to hit me up after this and be like, what the hell, dude, I've tried to do the right thing or whatever, because there are good people. But I think the happiest people when Valve dropped that rule were at ESL and Blast. Teams had negotiated together for years to establish a proper financial base.
And there wasn't even a flashpoint to throw under the bus in negotiations this time. Damn, fuck.
So what I'm saying is, if I'm running the books over at some of the larger tournament organizers that had spent years negotiating with the teams, and Valve said, no, you can't do that anymore, I'm like, oh, no. So I definitely think there was some of that. And I don't mean to disparage a lot of really good people, like I said, at those leagues that are trying to do the reality right of business, to build the esports. Yes, because it's a PvP sport. The teams, PvP, the leagues, and the players, PvP. It's all, that's all it is. And I think there were a lot of conversations by well-intentioned people like, how do we replace this? But we all knew it was never truly going to be replaced. The only leverage the teams have remaining is what events we attend. Mm-hmm. So you'll see some of the team rev share, or however they label it, to make sure we're abiding by the prize rules, be used as
prize money is the term.
Be used as incentives to make sure that the top draws show up to their events, because now PGL is coming in. You're seeing more events in the Middle East with big money. It's become a much more competitive ecosystem, because before, like, if you were obviously a Blast or EPO partner, you're going to be at their events because that was all part of the contractual relationship. And they knew as long as they had the majority of the top 15 teams or whatever participating, they'd have the draw, they'd have the viewership, they'd have the eyeballs, they'd have the attention, their sponsors would be happy, so on and so forth. But now it's going backwards a little bit to the Wild West. Whereas if Compass out of the Mideast or PGL, which was Argentina, but it looks like they're pulling back off that. I was kind of a bummer. I wanted to go to Argentina. But if they're like, hey, we're going to do X, Y, and Z, we're going to pay you blank for showing up, whereas I don't get paid in this money for showing up at a competitor's event, I might follow the money. And I know that's been a concern of some of the legacy leagues, fresh competition. So where we could say, oh, they're altruistic, they're trying to do right by the teams, I do think there is some of that, because I know there's good people that work at these leagues that see the bigger picture for the long-term vision of building an ecosystem where we can all thrive together. But I also think it's pure leverage. More competitors in the scene. You need to find a way to incentivize the top brands to show up at your event, because imagine number 1 and number 2 in the world don't show up at this big ESL or Blast event because they're off in the Middle East getting 300 grand appearance fees. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's been a frustrating period of time. I think for some owners that are genuinely trying to build the overall ecosystem, like I said, when Valve comes in and just makes a sweeping decision without necessarily understanding or caring about second, third, fourth order consequences, we're going to see ripples from that. But I am grateful to those at ESL and at Blast that have worked to try to build in financial incentives and revenue share structures, whether it be via Faceit or others, to try to make sure that the teams can eat too. Because if everyone is not eating on some level, the ecosystem will not thrive. And
what were the teams, as far as you know, were the teams consulted with this new process at all, or was this?
Yes.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, there's been a lot of communications dating back to the day Valve dropped the ruling. It surprised everyone, but like I said, I gotta be careful because I'm not trying to burn bridges. But if you think those big leagues were sad the day Valve dropped that, nah, they weren't. They were probably dancing behind closed doors.
And by the way, to tie it into an earlier topic, even worse, they then no longer even targeted the teams to battle over, which at least the Louvre Agreement and Blast were. The first immediate thing they did was PGL just cynically announced massive $1 million tournaments, which is saying to players, you want to play this tournament, and they get all the prize money, and the team gets fuck all from that. So it's just another example of excess in the industry.
Yeah, well, I love Silvio, and we're good friends, and I respect the hell out of him, and I think he runs some of the best events on the planet. But I sat down with him at Copenhagen and told him, prize money is not the way to do this. This is not how we build this sport. And, he's the owner, and he's made his decision, and I certainly respect it, and I respect him. But I'm not aligned with huge prize monies to try to leverage the players to force their organizations to attend one event over another, and I won't be blackmailed by my players ever to say, well, the prize money is way bigger over here, so we're going over here. I said, no, you fucking contracted me. You're going to go where I tell you to play. That's where that's at. And, everyone gets to run their own business and seek what's best for them. And my opinion is not the end-all be-all, and I completely and humbly recognize that. But I think a prize money war sends us back to 2014 is not good for anybody.
So a couple of points on that. The first thing I'll say is, prize money's definitely overweighted in the Valve rankings right now. It looks like they're not going to adjust that. Certainly not, at least for the first major cycle. Probably not for the year of 2025. And that's a shame, because I agree. I don't think that should be the deciding factor. Or rather one of the bigger deciding factors in terms of where you're ranked, like how much money you made. Obviously some events, which I won't name, could throw insane amonts of money at a prize pool.
I'll give you an example. Everyone will know this is a great case, because everyone who saw the major knows that with the eye test, the Mongols is really good at CS. That's not why the Mongols had high ratings. It's not because they went to the Colognes and upset. It's because they won Yala Compass, which had 200k first place, tiny event, by the way. Then they had the Thunder Pick one, which is online into like a 4-team land. Like, these aren't massive S-tier events, but they won like 700k from that, which, by the way, is more than you get for winning the majors. So the prize money made it so that on the Valve, they would have been super high up, like they were like the third best team in the world. Something insane. Well, that's obviously a system that, one, it shows that didn't even represent how good that team was, and even worse, that's exactly what we're talking about. If your event has like 5 times more prize money than IM Rio, well, IM Rio's a real tournament in a stadium with like traditional setups. So the problem is, again, it just allows people to like cynically push aspects of the industry, not in good faith. Go, I'm building a massive tournament, I'm going to be a competitive IM Rio. No, your tournament can be some rinky-dink thing that's online until the last bloody, you get in a room and you play 4 teams. Like, but the prize money, Valve doesn't understand that, and then if enough teams go, it'll suddenly activate that part, and I guarantee a mixture of the right team that understands how to exploit the loophole with the wrong TO that does a loophole, you'll get some nightmare scenario where teams will be in these tournaments and in majors even maybe when they're not even good. So let's get rid of that.
Yeah, my other point is this, and it's a little bit of pushback against Jason's point, and that is that I don't think the tournament operators should be negotiating privately with team owners about what cut of the prize pool they get. I think you do that with your players. I think that's the best way to do it, and I'll explain why. I
What
think
share of the prize cut?
yeah.
Maybe you misunderstood. I think the semantics are getting in the way. One I consider revenue share. I consider prize pools are always vastly gone to the players, and I think ESL's wording, perhaps partially due to the Valve rules, is going to cause additional confusion where it's called like what the org prize or whatever you
Well,
said it earlier.
they're
Monty.
representing it as a prize pool. They're
Yeah,
representing
yeah.
1.25 million prize pool, but it isn't a 1.25 million prize pool because 1 million
Right.
is going to the players, and then you as a org rather, you're going to take whatever cut you've negotiated with the players from the million. But then the $250,000 is guaranteed to go to you, the business.
Right.
And
That's what I'm saying. I think you calling that a prize is a touch unfortunate. I'm sure there's some legal.
That's what they're doing, right?
But basically,
so what
in
I'm
my
saying
version, in my
Yeah,
opinion,
sorry.
that is the rev share. That is meant to replace the underlying rev
Yes.
share that was in
Yeah,
place
but the
before.
reason
It
they're
doesn't
calling
replace
it a
but it
prize
offsets
is
that
because
loss.
two reasons. One,
Right. You're right. Yeah.
they're doing it. They literally announced this, like 6 days after PGL announced theirs. And so they're doing that to sort of one up PGL, which, by the way, competition. Hey, it's good. Capitalism. It works. Who knew? Right. But the problem I've got with how they're representing it is when you say it's a 1.25 million prize pool, the average fan goes, wow, that's $1.25 million up for grabs for the players. No,
Yeah.
it isn't. It's 1 million up for grabs for the players. And then it gets especially egregious when we look at IEM Dallas, IEM Spring, and IEM Chengdu. There are 3 events on the calendar where they are saying we have a $1 million prize pool, but the players will only get 300,000.
Yeah, 30% for their players, 70% for the teams.
Now, I'm gonna just say this. For me, the better option in that scenario isn't that the club takes $700,000 out of a $1 million prize pool. It's that you negotiate with your players what percentage from their prize winnings you take. And by the way, this shouldn't even be blanket. I mean, we're living in a world now. I know I don't need to tell you this, Jason. We're living in a world where so many contracts are almost like boilerplate, and players get the same salary whether they're good or not on the team. You know, like you might have a player that's nowhere near as good as the star player, but we just give them the same salary. We've started moving away from that in recent years, but only very recently. And then on top of that, you have a blanket agreement. We take 10% of all prize money across the board. Well, maybe the star player deserves to keep more of it, since, he's the one who wins the prize. And maybe the dog shit player that's going to get cut after 6 months and everyone knows he's not really good, maybe you take 30% of his prize money. Right? And this is how sports contracts work in the real world. And that's not what is happening here.
But the problem is that at least when I was negotiating with Counter-Strike players when I owned a team, is that you are competing against other potential contracts for those players that include all of the or most of the prize money.
Of course.
So if you try and negotiate that and say, hey, we want to take a bigger cut of the prize money, I think ESL just backdoored this and said, don't worry about this, team owners. Like, you won't have to fight with your players over this. We're just making this a separate.
Yeah, but then let's compare. And again, people are going to say I'm slinging dick for PGL here because I work PGL events and I don't work ESL. I'll let people at home decide whether or not they think I'm a fucking shill, considering I only just came back into the PGL fold. I lit them up in 2021 after working the most viewed major of all time. So you can decide whether I'm a shill or not. If you think I'm a shill, not much I can do about it. But how they've done it is you get the prize of 1.25 million for their events, right? There's not even any alteration. You just go to their 4 events in 2025. That's what the prize pool is. First place takes $400,000. If you finish like 15th to 16th, you get $12,500. And then they have an additional $450,000 that are used to fund the team's attendance. So, and not just the teams, they will fund up to an 8-team staff. So obviously 5, maybe a substitute, 2 support staff, maybe an owner, whatever it'll be. They have committed to a 4-star hotel. They're going to cover all your food, all your beverages, all of that while you're there. You're going to have access to a practice room for up to 6 people. It will be available the entire time. And that's going to cost them nearly, $500,000 on top. Now, again, I prefer this model because what that says to me is, if you're savvy, if you're a team owner and you negotiate with your fucking players, look, you can't just keep all the prize money. I'm paying you 20 grand a month, 30 grand a month. You don't get to keep all the prize money on top. If you've been savvy and negotiated that, you reap the rewards because you get a bigger cut from these prize pools. If you need ESL to kind of come in and essentially lowball the players to guarantee money for the orgs, who I do feel sympathy with in the pyramid of expenses, do you know what you've got? You've got PEA again. And you know what the players revolted against? PEA. So why is it good when ESL do it, but it's bad when a Flashpoint wants to do it or a bunch of North American orgs want to do it? Why are we all falling in line this time around?
Yeah, I think those are some really good points, and I do think some of those benefits you mentioned in terms of travel are certainly helpful. Just to put things in perspective, like for our team, one of the things they negotiated, and Monty's right, a lot of times they negotiate these things together. A lot of times they share the same agent. You might have 3 players with the same agent. So trying to kind of mix some of those prize pots, depending like, hey, you're not as good as such and such, can be challenging. But your point is valid. But last year, because one of the things we negotiated with our team, and we also thought it was healthier for them, was just like individual hotel rooms, which doesn't sound like a big deal to the average fan, but that cost us over $300,000 last year because a league will provide so many rooms. It'll be like complexity, you qualify for Rio, you get this many rooms. But when you add up, like you got a coach, manager, and each player gets their own individual room, well, that bill comes here. So that cost us an additional $300,000 last year. So if you're in negotiations with, a PGL, an ESL Blast, whatever, as a team owner, you're going to be like, hey, we'd like this expanded because you're minimizing a direct expense. And for North American teams, I could go on a rant. We spend much more time on the road, much more time away from family. Much more time in boot camps because we can't go home and see the family and then boot camp at night online. It's definitely something that we feel strong about and have tried to provide for our players. But no, really good points, Richard. It's rare you and I disagree. When we do, you're probably right because you're more objective.
I don't know about that. No,
and I'm trying to run a freaking business. If you were in my seat, you would see it
no, I'd probably go the other way. If
as an objective person, you're like, hey, you can see both sides or whatever. But like I said, a lot of times business is PvP. So I'm going to have an opinion. I'm going to leverage and negotiate for what's best for the company, for the larger package. So yeah,
my real issue isn't even the breakdown per se. I don't give a fuck if players don't make any prize money, frankly. I couldn't give a shit. It doesn't alter the outcome of what I enjoy about esports. I always thought the rubbernecking on large amounts of prize money was kind of gross and was driving the industry in a dark spot anyway. I mean, like, I won't pretend that the international has been good for the fabric of the Dota scene. It hasn't. It actually encourages picking up a team for TI and then cutting them for the rest of the year. It encouraged the death of the DPC, and now you don't even have the 40 million, 60 million dollar prize pools that generated all that media attention.
It's almost back to the first TI. It's just a couple of million again. Like real, it was a massive bell curve. It was crazy.
Yeah. So, but what I will say is this: if the players are going to not come out and speak out about this breakdown, if they're not going to, I mean, listen, we know the CSPP is dead, and if it isn't dead, it just doesn't matter anymore. If they're not going to come out and push back against ESL over this, this, then I mean, I'll never take players seriously again, because this is PEA too. You are the teams, and this is before I'll even get into another aspect in a moment once we've kind of talked this topic out. But once you start saying this is prize money, and what every fan in all of esports understands to be prize money is, it is what the players win, right?
Yeah.
And you start posting these big numbers and then going, yeah, but over half of that goes to the orgs. That's not prize money.
Yeah.
You're right, Jason. It's a fucking revenue share. And so I want them to be explicit and advertise the prize money. And that would make IEM Dallas, Spring, and Chengdu $300,000 events. So they should be treated as such on the calendar, and their points should be awarded on that basis, and not the $1 million. And I'll tell you exactly, and this might segue into the next point if we get there. I'll tell you exactly why ESL have done it this way. This is, we can talk about the fabric and the ecosystem and how the orgs have to get theirs, all valid points. But why are ESL doing it in 2025? You know, they've made it abundantly clear which orgs they value and which ones they don't. And the bottom line is, this is to get you to commit to their event. That's all. It is a sweetener. Yeah. And it's not... yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it's not an additional sweetener. You're going to offer me a fucking sweetener. Don't take it out the player's pocket, homeboy. You're fucking owned by the Saudi Arabian state. So don't come banging the fucking begging bowl like you can't afford it. Give me some... Right, if you're going to spend blood money big, you fucking pussies. Yeah. Or fuck
Explain to me though, and I don't want to go down too crazy a rabbit hole. I'm quickly running.
Listen, I'm aware of the position you're in.
Explain to me the analogy with the PEA though. The PEA was a team-owned league where the teams actually own the league.
Yes,
I'm just trying to understand the parallel that you're drawing.
Yeah, so the parallel I'm drawing is exactly this. The PEA was going to be a team-owned league that was going to create more revenue share for the orgs, and but basically was going to be to the detriment of the players, because they would have to commit to it exclusively, and they would get less exposure by not playing in these other events. What the ESL has created a system that the players are now going to earn less in prize money because they're cutting out their share and giving it to the orgs. And so the players should turn around to you guys and say, no, I am not playing in a $1 million tournament where I earn less than a third of that.
So I will point out,
and that's what they did for the PEA.
Yes, I will point out that actually, for at least IEM Dallas this last year, the prize pool was $250,000 to the players. It is more this year. It's $300,000. They have also just added the $700,000.
Yeah, but they're fronting it as $1 million prize pool, which it is not.
That is true. But I'm just saying they're not like, it doesn't feel like they're taking away from the prize pool that the players experienced in their previous iterations of these events.
Okay, so again, some of these events are going to overlap. We know that.
Sure.
Right?
Yep.
So guess which events I'm going to compete at if I'm a player? Won't be ESL events.
Yep.
If an ESL event overlaps with a PGL event, and I'm a player and I can go, wait, the actual prize pool is 1.25 million, not a Fugazi 1.25 million, where it's really $1 million or really $300,000 or whatever the fuck else it might be. Guess which event I want to go to as a player.
You're basically pitting the players against their own team. You're incentivizing them to actually act against the interest of the person paying their salary.
Correct. So we are gonna. There's one more aspect of this that ESL announced that we need to talk about as well, which is the viewership incentives. But as you can see, I just want to point out that the whole purpose of this is that the teams acquire. So the teams they desire this sense of safety, right, in the scene that's extremely unstable. And I'm just going to give you guys some life advice, because in this holiday season, you're going to do things that are inherently not good decisions or unsafe, such as Richard having a couple bottles of wine before he came on this live podcast. Maybe a decision he doesn't make, not in the holiday season. And so you may be at a holiday party, of course, and it's a perfect time, you think, to hook up with the cute guy or girl that you've been eyeing from your workplace this whole time. But if you do that, please, for the love of God, first off, don't do that. And second off, use protection. And just like you wouldn't in this holiday season when you're out shopping on public Wi-Fi, you wouldn't go raw dogging a public Wi-Fi router, would you? No, you would not do that. And that's why you should use ExpressVPN to get that security. It even has easy-to-use apps. It encrypts and reroutes all of your online traffic through their secure servers, making it virtually impossible to hack your connection. It's so easy to use. You just hit one button on your phone, leave it on in the background. It just sits there protecting you. So while you are out hopping from place to place, doing that holiday shopping, do it on ExpressVPN. Also, if you're watching Foreplay, it can be used to change your location so you can watch movies along with Richard and Thorin and myself.
Foreplay is the perfect time to apply protection.
Exactly. Foreplay is the perfect time to apply protection. Indeed. And it is easy, as you guys know. So there you go. It's rated consistently the #1 VPN on the market by top tech reviewers like CNET and The Verge. And with your one account, you can use it on up to 8 devices simultaneously. So laptops, phones, tablets, even your smart TVs. There's never been a better time to stay safe this holiday season because right now you can use our special link to get 3 extra months of ExpressVPN for free. Just go to expressvpn.com/horsemen, that's plural, to take advantage of this special deal. That's expressvpn.com/horsemen for 3 months, absolutely free. And also, do not hook up with people at your corporate parties. Don't do that.
And unlike Jason Lake,
Works for TSM.
they won't run out on you in the middle of something. They're reliable. They're there. You can trust them.
There you go. So thank you very much. And we will talk about the part of this, which is the club incentive, which I find to be an overly simplistic calculation. But the other thing that was announced by ESL is this charming mathematical equation that they have debuted called the club contribution equals V times N, where V is the sum of points earned for viewership across our tournaments, see table below, and N is the number of EPT tournaments, that's ESL Pro Tour tournaments a team has participated in. So basically what it is they offer you points based on your placing and the prestige of the event, and they multiply it by the number of ESL Pro Tour segments you've attended this year. And then of those, if you are in the top 16 teams, your point total is taken out, the percentage of your point total is taken out of the total point total, and you receive that percentage of $3 million, which I know is complicated. But basically, for example, if you rank 1st through 4th at Katowice or Cologne, the more prestigious tournaments with higher viewership, you would get 8 points. Whereas, again, they're weighting the smaller tournaments. Points earned at Dallas or Chengdu, 1st through 4th would be 12 points. And ESL Pro League or EPL, that would be worth 14 points.
AKA the Navi clause.
Basically. And Furia.
So effectively, but no, these are for finishes. And I think that's what's interesting about this is that some teams have provided significant boost to viewership, famously, like a lot of the Brazilian teams, even when they don't place well, their matches are highly viewed. And there isn't any kind of incentive for that, which I think is kind of problematic in an equation like this, is that you're saying that basically viewership directly correlates to placement, right?
Even though people will think, because obviously I typically like to do things as like an abstract, like what in an ideal world would be the fairest, what would incentivize the purest aspect of the game. That's not the industry we can afford to be in, because there'll be no industry. Like, if you want it to be really pure, me and Jason are going to have to be back in a 3-star hotel ballroom basement, and the players are going to have to get paid $200, and we're going to have to just hope you get like a top 8 or something. If you want to actually have, at the moment, the only way the industry actually gets money through the door is eyeballs, which then we then sell the sponsorships off. So actually, do you know what? You're all going to think I'm going to make fun of those Brazilian fans. No, actually, Furia being able to reliably say, I can give you this many viewers every time I'm in a match. Actually, they're carrying the event. I'm sorry, do you know Team Spirit just won the major? Team Spirit's nowhere near as popular as Na'Vi or some giant org like that. Like, unfortunately, it doesn't actually matter in that sense how good you are at the game. How good you are at the game isn't paying the bills for the tournament tournament to have the lights on and the crowd there and the prize money that you then win. In fact, if you're Team Spirit, you should be glad that Furia comes to the event and makes top 8 and brings the viewers, so that then you get to have more people watch you play them in the quarterfinals. So in a fucked up way right now, I'm sorry, even if it seems cynical, people like Na'Vi, FaZe Clan, G2 and fucking Furia and maybe MIBR are like the most important teams in Counter-Strike. Like, I agree with Monty. I actually would say that's quite a good system to just reward doing very well at big tournaments, basically, Monty. It's a good way to weight the thing. But I would absolutely have some sort of thing where you could potentially make more revenue as a team if your team brings more viewership. You're carrying the broadcast. You are the reason people are watching.
And you could do this with some sort of calculation that would be like, group stage average viewership versus your viewership, and that would weight points, so if there is a, even in the early phases or Swiss phases of an event, if you have, you're an outlier in one of those categories, either way, if you're drawing low viewership as well, that you wouldn't actually get as many points for the viewership score that they're touting. To me, this just feels overly simplistic.
Yes.
And also, I do think it's funny that viewership points are less at the lower viewership events as opposed to Katowice or Cologne, right? Where it feels like you could balance out the fact that ESL is offering these bigger club prize pools for the lower circuit by saying, okay, but those teams who do really well at our important events are going to get more points that contributes to the viewership incentives. But they don't do that. They say, well, nope, you got to come to this other event, and if you get first place, you'll actually get 4 more points than if you got top 4 at Cologne or Katowice, which does seem kind of deeply cynical to me.
I think these are really good observations, and I think the viewer should be able to understand the challenges that kind of occurred post Valve's decision, where there's a lot of stakeholders involved with differing levels of leverage in the negotiations. And I think some well-intentioned people have tried to put together something logical, like Thorin was laying out. Their viewership does matter a great deal. There's, we use data providers to track impressions, that use AI to track how many times sponsors things are seen, and so do leagues. And when they go back to their negotiations with their critical partners for their bottom line, they need all this data. So the teams that bring the eyeballs are more valuable inherently into their business model. So you're trying to balance that with all the other concerns. Teams are like, hey, we need stability, we need rev share. Players quite often are more interested in some of the hospitality and the hotel rooms and things than even necessarily the size of the prize money. There's just a lot of voices, and it's certainly not an easy job to kind of structure these things in a way where everyone is at least somewhat happy. And I think 2025 is going to be very much a learning year. We're going to see how this all plays out and how the Valve ranking system might evolve, and how the majors look without the RMRs. And it'll be a really interesting time. And like I alluded to earlier, I definitely have concerns about the economics of the whole ecosystem heading into next year, particularly from the team side, because I run a team. So that's what keeps me up at night. But overall, I definitely want to head towards the end here with a much more optimistic picture. Like, if you had told the average fan back in 2003, when I started Complexity, that 2024 we are still going to be having these conversations, and Counter-Strike players are going to be playing globally around the world, and there's these big leagues and $1 million here, $1 million there, and the Saudi government's invested in all these other things that have happened in the last couple of years, I think even the most optimistic fan would have been like, nah, man, you're smoking something. So I tend to bring economic reality into things. It sounds like I'm highly pessimistic. And Rich and I have talked about this before, but in Thorin and I in his podcast, there's a lot to be optimistic about. Does this ecosystem have
I am actually optimistic, as incredible as it might sound, given everything I've said over this broadcast. I think 2025...
We talked about this in Copenhagen.
Yeah,
bro. There's so much positive to be had, and there's so much good that has been accomplished. Right. And we've built a new digital sport that's around the world. It doesn't have a lot of problems. It has mountains of problems. But I'm
even
still
from
very
even from a
bullish on the
fan
long
from a
term.
fan perspective, I mean, we've been talking about this from the economic perspective, but I mean, I think it's true to say that regardless of whether it's bad for teams, the EPL and Blast viewing experience had become bad for fans to watch because teams were phoning it in, sending dog shit rosters to these things and getting guaranteed placements. And that it is exciting that there's another tournament operator that's entering in a big way in terms of PGL. It is exciting that we're going to get potentially a larger major and fewer RMRs. Valve can be capricious and unpredictable at times, but the announcement may be making slowly this iteratively better as a fan viewing experience, even if it destabilizes the economics behind the
I'll
scene.
give you an
And
argument.
does it
Keep going.
destabilize it, or does it just make it like bring it back down to earth, like into a reasonable level would be the next question.
Even though this is a byproduct, sadly, of some other things that have been discussed in the episode of Messi, also about like the ELO system and how it'll all work, etc. Look, as much as that is being implemented in a way that I think has negative consequences, potentially for the Cols and the Mongols of the world and the Saws and those smaller teams, I will say, if you're a selfish person like me, where I only really care about the top 10 teams in the world, that's about all I really care about. And what I have always wanted for the entire time in esports, Monty notices, I actually want like Formula One / the Painkiller World Tour. I want every month the tournament to be all the same teams, like Formula One, and you just compete against each other, tournament after tournament. So that way, at the end of the year, I don't have to do this thing of like, but Spirit went to a Betboom Dacia Belgrade, and then Mouse, they were at this one that was like a small one, and then this one. It's like, no, every time he was in Monza, and then like Monaco, and then so at the end, you just know who the best is. You know who had all the top fours, and you know what a top two means. And it means that for me, I'm going to get to see all the best teams play at the same tournaments, because people don't know the ELO system basically encourages you, as well as the prize money, to just go to the biggest tournament, and all the top teams will go in theory to the same tournaments. It won't be like currently, where what you do cynically is you do think to yourself, oh, is Vitality not going to that one? Well, we're Mouse, so fuck it, nip in there, we might steal that final. Instead, everyone will go to the same tournament and try to win it. So if you want to see the highest level CS, we will get it week after month after month after month after month in theory. So at the top level, it's going to be really good. It's just the obvious aspect there is, well, the rich will get richer and the poor will just be
the bad news, unfortunately, is it's not going to pan out like that. So I mean, over the course of 2025, we've really loaded up the fucking plate of events, and already we're looking at probably, my prediction is conservatively, at least one A to S tier event is just going to get cancelled, probably due to lack of signups from the teams, because it's going to overlap with another event that they're going to want to go to. And I'm also just going to prepare you for the amount of fuckery that is going to go on with these fucking orgs, especially the power orgs like Na'Vi. And you have to understand that concepts like the G7 and WISA and whatever fucking bullshit they're on now, it never went away. It's still there. Na'Vi still swing their dick around in meetings. Astralis still do the same. And then let's start look at all the interlinking business connections. Does no one find it odd that we announced like 2 years ago that a guy called, what was his name? Max Cripper was meant to be the new owner of Na'Vi. But he also is a majority owner in GGBet. And GGBet sponsor Vitality. And these and these orgs are going to be in a room together deciding which events they're going to go to. And ESL just so happens to invent something which is like, hey, if you get loads of viewership, and everyone knows Na'Vi beats the viewership all the time. So what's going to end up happening is, much like what happened with Flashpoint, these big orgs are going to talk a fair game and say, we're going to do what's right for us and what's right for the points and what's right for the players. What they really mean is, we are going to be so far up ESL's arse, you will not see us for forever, because they're the ones that understand how to play the Game of Thrones. And fuck Blast, and fuck PGL, and fuck Starladder, and fuck everyone else.
There's also, the implicit threat, whether real or just perceived, of participation in the Esports World Cup also being inherently linked to participation in the ESL Pro Tour, because it's the same owner, right? So if you get in the bad graces because you're not attending ESL events, do you get ejected from, Esports World Cup partnership status, right?
I mean, it's possible. I mean, look, these orgs are never going to get held accountable. ESIC was the only hope for that. And they're as fucking toothless as my nan, and she's been dead 20 years. You know what I mean? They don't do anything. You get 10k fine, it's fuck all. Like, 10k fine is nothing. Like, what even is that? It's a fucking joke. So it's like, right, Astralis, let's be clear what Astralis fucking did, right? Astralis literally rigged like their roster to get a new roster in. They coerced a player to say he was ill when he wasn't, so they could have their new lineup to give it more table time to qualify for a major before they got rug pulled by their own star player saying he was too sick to compete, but P.S. he's really good now. By the way, Weird Al, it's only the events in the Far East that seem to affect him. Whatever. No point in having that conversation. So anyway, so they haven't been held accountable for that. We know they lied. The player said they lied. The player agent said they lied. The best we can come up with is a 10k fine. They didn't even get kicked out of ESL when all the Hunden shit dropped. Hunden, while at a Heroic and taking a salary from Heroic, was assembling a team and working for Astralis, their most hated rivals. It's not even up for discussion. It is a matter of court record. What did ESL do? We'll find you 100 grand. P.S. Please come back to our events because you're a really big market and we love you. Guys, please understand how the table is fucking tilted in this scene right now. These power organizations get to do what the fuck they want, and ESL co-sign that. I won't even get into the Esports World Cup and the layers on that one. Do we need to? Do we need to talk about the trickle down from the Saudi money? Do I need to remind everybody about that? So what do you think these teams are going to do when their players are going, but sir, we can make an actual 1 million there, and it says in our, you only take 10% of that. But if we go here, we get less. Right? What do you think is going to happen? They're going to go, shut the fuck up. ESL want this. They're the 80% of the calendar. They're the big boys. Like, have you seen the calendar? Have you seen how ridiculous it is? So, Blast have the bounty event and bounty finals in Katowice, right? That's January, all just locked up. Then Katowice runs into February. Then as soon, like 5 days after the final of Katowice, Cluj-Napoca starts for PGL. So 5 days, get your ass from Poland to Romania, get yourself settled in. By the way, the final of Cluj-Napoca, 23rd. When do you think Pro League starts?
24th morning by any chance?
25th, not bad. Nearly there. Right, let's go into March, shall we? By the way, the day after ESL Pro League finishes, Blast Open Lisbon
Notice
starts.
this as well. Even if a team did have the window to make both events, if they miss a flight, you might just be fucked. Like, it's actually stupid. Some of the
We already had that, if you remember, in 2019, pre-COVID.
Yes, we ECS into EPL, yeah.
Yeah, we already had that. We had Team Liquid had to go from the airport and just plug their fucking equipment in and play. Yeah. Right? So again, like, by the way, I love that the calendar's stacked, but these orgs are going to try and do what they always do. And
this was done intentionally, guys. They didn't have to do it that way. Yes,
exactly. Right. And so again, I'm just going to continue just to illustrate the point. I know this is a really boring segment, but let's play the game. Right. So we have March 16th. ESL Pro League finishes. Blast Open Lisbon starts March 17th. That runs right the way through until March 30th. PGL Bucharest, April 5th. They finish April 13th. IEM Spring, April 21st to 27th. After that, Blast Rivals. We go into May. PGL Astana, by the way, 6 days after Blast Rivals and 7 days after the Yala Compass 2025 finals. Astana, in case you don't know, that's Kazakhstan, guys. I looked at a map just the other day because I'm like, I think I might be working that event.
Yeah, you got to fly to Central Asia.
Oh, holy shit. It really do be that far
Kazakh
away.
rich.
Yeah, right? Yeah, exactly. It's coming. The Borat Mankini's coming out, so watch out, right? So that event finishes on May 18th. I am Dallas. Now, again,
the whole year is like this, man.
For non-geography fans,
It's like
Kazakhstan
actually the opposite
here,
side of the world.
Dallas here. The tournament starts the day after. You can't do them all. You can't. And so, look,
No.
that takes us up to June,
It is 6,500 miles from Dallas.
right?
And that's not even taking into account like just player health and well-being
course,
and mental
yeah.
health and like
Yeah.
it's brutal.
That
You
is-
have to pick and choose.
the way,
You're gonna have to make choices,
the
and
first rule,
ESL
by
are
the way-
stacking it so you don't choose
Yes.
any of their rivals.
By the way, for that one there, that's a classic example of where you would be absolutely fucked by the jet lag doing that event, going from Kazakhstan to Dallas and
What would
playing
it
immediately.
mean? What would the
Absolutely.
event even mean?
But remember, this is the worst part. I want to make a key historical point here. In history, when we're looking back, if I'm not there to be in and go, oh, by the way, remember, like actually 2 days before that, they were in Kazakhstan, you're just going to look in history and go, oh, that team, I thought they were like the 3rd best team in the world. They were shit. They went out
Yeah.
straight away in the first group stage. Like, you're not going to know that. It's going to actually ruin even the historical record.
So I want to turn this to Jason because, like, I think it's important to understand how he prioritizes these events. Now, probably as an American team, you're saying, well, we got to be at IEM Dallas, right? Like you know,
Yeah,
you
for
have
sure.
geographic considerations as well. But when you think about which events to attend, how much do you involve your players? What's your kind of hierarchy of participation?
I mean, it's a great question, and it's constantly changing. I mean, the org obviously has to take in a lot of different factors, from the economics to the travel time to we're very fortunate to have Messio as our manager, who understands all these nuances at a level like a Thorin type level that I don't even have the time.
That's why we had him on the.
He's like, they alone if we do this, and if we get, and then if they finish 8th, we'll get this, and then I'm just like, dude. It's all you, and I'm so happy that you've got it all under control because I don't have the time or the bandwidth to keep up with it all. But no, we absolutely talk to the players, and it's very, very rare that we haven't been aligned on these things, and it's difficult. Like Rich said, there's going to be times when the players might want to be one place, and we need them to be another place, and I think we're going to see that from multiple orgs over the course of the year, and each tournament organizer, in my opinion, is using different forms of leverage to try to draw the teams and the players to their events. Like you pointed out, ESL's doing this. I think if we go and look at the other major ones, they're each going to have their cookie, right? They're each going to have their carrot. Like, come over to our event. We know you can't make that travel day, but if you come to our event, you'll get this. And, you know, for better or for worse, it's the only leverage the teams have right now. And that's attendance. Because with the rise of some of these newer tournament organizers, the new PGL plans, like I said, I'm a big fan of PGL. I love their events. There's just not enough time in the calendar to attend a lot of these things. So like Duncan was saying earlier, if you have to have the Furia there, you got to have the Navi there, and some of these big brands that really draw audience, and you can take those numbers, go sell with sponsors. You got to do whatever you can do to get them there. And it's going to be interesting to see the soap opera play out a little bit, like who goes where and why did they not go there. And it's going to provide you guys with a lot of content this year. That's for damn sure.
Yeah.
I have one final topic that we have to discuss before I know, Jason, time is running short, which is the actual state of the game. Now, obviously, this is the first full year of CS2 being here. We've seen this switch up to MR12 kind of play out over the course of this year. So in terms of the actual competitive game, how are you guys feeling about this now, having some time to watch it play out?
I actually hate it personally, so I'll just do a quick version. The problem is this: we combined the worst of all worlds. So, for example, you could have maybe, if you were cynical, I don't know anyone ever said this, someone might have thought CSGO was too CT-sided, right? But the problem is, because of the way the economy works in the game, you actually need the CTs to sort of have a slight edge, because otherwise when the CTs get behind on the economy, they never have a full buy round, and it just becomes a really shit game. It's not even actually a
Especially
good game
in
to watch.
MR12.
Yeah, and then you've got MR12, which, by the way, was great for the length of the games, and it makes the games a lot more poppy. But if you ever go back and watch a game, you will see games that are absolute travesties, where one team just wins both pistols, and they're not even the good gun round team, and they sometimes even sneak over the line and win the game, or they get way too close.
Rounds have to go.
So there's that. By the way, I agree with you. If you're going to go MR12, you pretty much got to, because another thing we've done, by the way, is notice this year how when you do the in-game leader of the year, it's basically Alexi Bean who gives a shit. That used to be like a conversation that went 5 deep. That's because when you had max rounds 15 and the old economy, in-game leaders, it's like an American football game. They have the downs. They have something to work. That's a term from American football there. I'm not now going to say any names, am I? But anyway, they had the space to work with. They had the bandwidth. Whereas, so for example, if you don't know in Counter-Strike, it's like American football. Sometimes you do a move now to set up another move later, 2 down the line. It's what you call conditioning. Whereas the problem is in CS like this, if you're the team that loses the pistols and gets ecoed once, then you get basically like 3 cracks, like an entire half of offense in this analogy. And then the other guy, he wins the pistol and holds on the he gets like 7 chances. Like, can you see how absurd that would be if you were playing an American game of football and you get that many more? And I'm not talking about like a clock management. This is just a normal scenario. So you end up with variance that is crazy. It's why then add in formats. Then we keep running these and now even worse, stupid fucking ESL, who used to actually listen to my good ideas and implement what I think is the best format I've ever seen in Counter-Strike, the Cologne format, where they have the play-in for the other teams, the main event, by the way, as the 1BO1, then it's BO3, the whole way double elim, into then the single elim stadium event with the 6 teams, which is nice and comfy. You get the 2 matches a day, and then the final. We eliminated every problem, the 4 best of 3s in a day, too many BO1s, randomized elements, you don't know who you're playing, don't have enough tournament lives. We made it the sweet spot. Instead, we're going and everyone's cheering as we bring in 1 million Swiss systems. And what is the best part about Swiss system? When some dickhead like the Major makes it so, Swiss system, Monty knows this now. Monty had to learn the hard way in League of Legends. You get 3 tournament lives. If you think it's bad, right? At least in League, you play a match a day. In Counter-Strike, you use your first 2 lives sometimes on day 1. Day 1. You arrive at the event, you play 2 matches, you can be up 2-0, you're almost qualified. You can be almost out of the tournament. What's brilliant is the best example of this is G2 won Blast Fall, flew to Brazil, played IM Rio. They got lucky. They didn't even have to play the second game on the next day. They lost 1BO1 in the upper bracket. They just lost to BO3. They're out the whole thing. Swiss system's even worse. We've had 1 million examples of people get through from just the 2 BO1s, just means it's a luckier path to the playoffs. Then we got if you do another thing about Swiss system, by the way, then you've got to add in like the fucking aspects of seeding, which then means one team gets Team Liquid basically made top 8 at this major by beating someone that wouldn't even make a file of a fucking ESL Challenger event. They made top 8 at the major. Meanwhile, you had people like Heroic running nightmare-fueled murderers' roars to even make like a semis that had to have beaten half the top 10 or something mental. But yeah, I just think the problem is it's made the game very, very variable. It's actually added a lot of randomness into the game. And then also, I do think, unfortunately, the T-side economy is still too powerful. Then lastly, I'll just throw this in there. One of the biggest problems that Valve has is Valve just doesn't get the real genius of their game is the fucking maps, dude. That is what makes Counter-Strike brilliant. It is even how different the change between maps are. But it's not like League of Legends, we've got 1 million different options. You have a set menu, and we're just trying to find out where can we get like a good match and a good matchup. We have a map pool right now that I as far as I know, every pro I've talked to agrees it is the worst map pool ever. We have like 2 or 3 maps that people don't like. You can only permaban 1. Back in the day, it used to even be a great conversation. What is the worst map? Everyone says, not only is it Vertigo, but nobody plays it. In fact, what makes the veto interesting now isn't what they're going to pick. It's when 1 million of the top 10 all ban Vertigo, and the game is, who's going to ban it first? Who's going to be forced in a game of chicken to not play the shittest map of all time? It's insane. And if you don't know, by the way, the reason why that map was a turd from day 1 and could never be polished is because think about what I described about how actually Counter-Strike has a parallel on offense to American football. Imagine if the field was 30 meters long. That is fucking Vertigo. There is no build-up. There is no, you take this area of map control and you battle over this, and then you use utility to open that. You just on the site. It's just people sat in a site and people going to the site. You shoot guns at each. It's like it's Call of Duty. It is idiots Counter-Strike. It is for people going woo and drinking fucking energy drinks. But there's no actual thinking. There's no cerebral aspect. That is in the pool. And if you actually play it in your map pool, here's the thing: Jason's team cynically picks it against people and wins. Also, let's get quality Counter-Strike teams winning games again. Whatever. I threw that in there at the end. They do technically play that map a lot. So the game's not in a great space at the moment. Here's the thing. By the way, there's plenty of other aspects. Great players. We've got some amazing tournaments. The MR12 thing does make the matches go nice and quick. None of those things. But I actually think the game itself, people complained about the end of CSGO. I think CS2's it's in a rough place competitively for me. I don't care. I don't play the game casually. I have no idea if it's good. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But when I watch matches, I do see a lot of holes where I feel like we've regressed into. By the way, it's also why you look at the meta. Outside of Na'Vi, there's a million teams where they could have won the major and they're all going to break up because it's just a team of fraggers. No one has any fucking like tactical know-how. No one has some team spirit. That's not Counter-Strike. One of the best things about Counter-Strike, think of the last years, you had teams like ENCE, etc., coming along, where they didn't have to have huge firepower. They had like a system and an IGL and a fucking approach, and they built it up over month, and it was a story. It played out. You can just go out, you can come top 4 in the ton by having 2 players out frag, or they don't turn up and you just out on day 2. I think that's nonsense. I want to follow a sport, not just this like randomized element.
Yeah, fair. I'm like,
How
do
the
you
hell
have
do
any
you
thoughts
follow
on
that?
I mean,
I think it's just interesting because you guys have all been professionally involved in Counter-Strike for over 20 years. So you have so much to compare it against, the viewing experience now versus in previous eras.
I mean, Thorin understands this game at a depth, quite frankly, that I never will. And, you know, he makes really astute observations all the time. My opinion, the game definitely has a lot wrong with it. And I'm speaking inside the game, not even the map pool or some of the other things he referred to. But I can't help but go back to when CSGO dropped, man. That game was so fucking unplayable for, I don't know, 2 years? Longer? Like, it was, I thought this is it. Counter-Strike's over. When I first started playing
I quit
CSGO,
covering CS.
I this was the end of Counter-Strike. It was that bad. So at least on some level, and compare it to that, I think CS2 is ahead. I agree, Vertigo's shit. I have no idea why we were so good on it. We had to take advantage of it.
Even at least,
I don't think we've ever practiced Mirage in our life.
When he came on our shows, even though he picks it and wins it, even he said he doesn't like it.
Oh yeah. If you're a Counter-Strike purist and you've been around the game for a long time, you don't like Vertigo. But
which is the
for whatever reason, we were really good on it. So like,
normally the teams that are good on the one map, everyone else is like, go, no, there's more to it. You know, there's a hidden depth. They don't even pretend. Even they're like, just take it out. Just take it out. We don't want it.
Half the time we're like, why are we so good on this? We're like, we don't know, man. We don't have any secret sauce. We just play it like we do other maps. I don't know. We just have a higher win percentage. So you go with the probabilities. But no, I'm optimistic about the state of the game. I'm not a fan of the charms. Like we talked about earlier, it's way too Valorant or Fortnite-ish for me because I'm an old guy. I'm a boomer. I'm a purist. But if they got to do something,
it's fine
to make some money, whatever.
It's just such a weird one, Monty, because it's a cosmetic, like I said, that distracts and actually blocks part of your view. Yeah. Whose idea was it? It's unironically like this is almost what it is. If you actually just had like a pair of fuzzy dikes hanging off the front of the gun as you're trying to watch the guy spray, what is that? Like you can have a million. By the way, like the gloves, there's a million. You can have a watch that the guy could have. You could do a million different things, like a special view thing. I don't know, but this actually actively, I think, is almost like a negative. Like I don't know, except for making money, what's the upside?
Yeah, I totally agree. And speaking of making money, I hope at some point they do get team charms in. Like if we're going to have them, I'd like to at least make some money from it, but that hasn't happened yet. And it's
no one's making money from CS except. Well, there's a limited handful of people that will be making money from CS, but it won't be anyone that makes a positive contribution to CS.
Oh, you know, one thing we didn't mention as well, look, we can't go into this whole thing, but one thing that is actually slightly dark about CS right now is there is one way you can escape this giant game of chicken between agents and orgs and buyouts, which is if you're just in a region where you only speak your language and you don't speak English, good luck. You're now playing in the 5th best team in the world and you only get $4,000 a month. And you're going to all the same tournaments and the guy you're playing and beating makes 25,000. Well, bad luck. You shouldn't have been born speaking, I don't know, Portuguese or Russian or something, mate. Bad luck for you, I guess. Like, that's the other thing. There are certain orgs, by the way, that just by virtue of that being their region, their margins are just like a million times better than Jason's. Like, Jason, remember, has to compete with Australians, Europe, anyone who speaks English. That's all the people who are coming for his players or he's going for their players. And so all of a sudden that market, his market's going to be crazy out of control with all the like supply and demand aspect. Theirs is going to be like very, very almost like old school sports before free agency, almost like people just stay in the same teams, get a small amount of money. They don't even imagine there's more. So there's even an aspect there where you're not even playing the same game. You're being treated by Valve like you're all, remember, we're treating like we're all NFL franchises with the same salary cap. We're not. This is like if one person was the Lakers and the other one was someone from like the semi-professional division in like English football or something. It doesn't even make sense that these people could be in the same tournament almost.
It's incredibly difficult running Counter-Strike in North America.
Yeah.
I just made logical decisions and didn't have any history in this game or any kind of tie to the history of esports. There's arguments to be made that Counter-Strike doesn't make any sense for a North American organization. Just the one thing I mentioned earlier about betting partners puts you at such a disadvantage compared to your direct competitors. And like you said, we're constantly competing against much larger budgets. We're constantly traveling much, much more, which is very difficult on the players and the entire organization. We're constantly behind. But we're trying to make efforts in North America to revive the scene to offset the damage done by the rise of Valorant, over the COVID era. And, we've got a monthly tournament going on, and we're just trying to support other organizations that are developing talent in our region, because we see that as almost a moral imperative for us. We see Counter-Strike as our root system in this organization, and it's really difficult right now. I ain't gonna lie.
By the way, that's why we
I'll
also.
tell you. Let me finish. Let me finish quick. Just to right now, this office I'm sitting in, this will be the last podcast I do in this facility, because we're going to move out at the end of the year, because this place costs over $100,000 a month to rent and operate, because I'm literally on the campus of the Dallas Cowboys. It's like premier real estate, and we built this when we were under their ownership group, so it made a lot of sense then. But it doesn't make as much sense now, and we're trying to implement austerity measures to really get our costs under control, and leaving this place that we do love and that we designed and built with my core crew of people is, it's emotionally difficult, because we had worked so hard to get here and to build something like this, and we're going to be closing it down. But we have economic realities that we're facing, and in order to remain competitive, sometimes you have to make difficult decisions that you might not want to be doing. So you'll see different things from us coming next year. I want to give you guys a little spoiler.
Rollback cap. Okay.
Nice.
As we leave this campus,
understandable.
We'll be retired, and we'll be announcing in January. But I'll give you guys the spoiler. We're gonna do a retro era. We've been so busy since I bought the company back. I just haven't had the time or the bandwidth to really redesign this. So we decided for probably, I don't know, 6 months to a year or so, we're going to go through a retro era and throw back to the swooshes. I'm going to design this to be a little more modern. This aspect ratio is impossible to work with everywhere. But we're going to be rolling back to the red and the white and the black heading into January, and doing a little throwback era while we redesign this for the next 10 years, which is exciting for us. So we're going through a lot of changes here. Obviously, the big question for Complexity specifically is Alish going to stay? John is understandably wants to play on a team that can win massive events, because of, he's worked really hard for a lot of years to really get his skill to where he's at. And we had a meeting right here in my office, and, I want what's best for him. I get that, he's to the stage of his career where he's really peaking and his biological clock is ticking, you could say. You get to an age where, you have life changes, you grow older, you just might not be at your peak forever. So we're working through that, and, we're certainly not a prison here. And if John can find an organization that right now is prepared to battle for top 3 consistently, we'll try our best to make that happen for him, and take whatever buyout we get and probably reload with maybe some up and coming North American talent. But again, it's like a chessboard, because depending on what he does, depends on what type of player we need to replace. And there's all these moving pieces, and people hit me up every day, and there's a lot of unanswered questions that we still have. But yeah, going back to what you said originally, it's really freaking difficult being in Counter-Strike in North America. And if we didn't love it, we weren't passionate about it, we couldn't justify it. But as long as I can manage to keep this company alive, as long as I can keep the lights on, we're gonna try our best to contribute to Counter-Strike, and not only in our own backyard, but North America and in general. So that's kind of where we're at, and I really appreciate that some of the objective, intelligent people in the community understand just how difficult it is being a North American org right now and competing, because we get all the hate, and all the gamblers lose their bets when we get upset, like we did in the BO1s at the major, and we get death threats or whatever. And it's just kind of like, excuses are never really valuable and they never really get you anywhere in life. But shit, we got a lot of excuses. We're constantly against the wall and trying to climb up against the odds. And as long as I'm here, we'll keep doing it. But it's a difficult time right now, and we really appreciate all the fans that support us and get behind us and are in the Discord and tweeting at us, because we're definitely going through some changes. And the next year and a half is going to be really interesting. So, yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
funny enough, what you did set me up, because what I wanted to say was I actually think Jason is in the most unfair position incentive-wise I have ever seen in professional Counter-Strike, which is all these NA fans go, you've all let all of you, not us, you've all let NACS die. We want an NA team to cheer for. So Jason makes a team with 3 NA players, including the best NA player, who is literally a top 10 player in the world. I can tell you, I can see it with my eyes. But the problem is, because he's gone with NA players, then the team A isn't good enough to support Elige to win the tournament. So then everyone goes, fuck Complexity. They are a prison for Elige. Get him out of there. Even though if you're Jason, you should, if you want to have an NA team, that's the best NA team you could make right now. Then also, simultaneously, he carries all the weight of being the NA team. Meanwhile, Team Liquid, the actual org with the tens of millions of dollars who could make some super team for NA, they go, lol, NA, we'll just have Twists and Naff, and then actually just go with 3 non-NA players, lol, and then they just go, oh, what's that? Are we just going to get all the success? So we get the fan love, we get all the success, and then we don't carry the can for NA not surviving. And so in that scenario, like, here's what's weird. I'll give you the thought piece that if you think about this food for thought, it will change your whole philosophy on Complexity. Jason just said there, he is choosing to represent North America. He could just say, like a certain other massive organization that's worth hundreds of millions valuation, I'll just sign a Russian log. I'll just sign Eastern European players. That's the min-max right there, mate. If I make majors, great, I get the stickers. If I don't, who gives a fuck? And then that scenario, and I'm not the NA rep, so bizarrely, Cloud9 and TL should be the NA orgs. They're just fucking playing out there with everyone else. Jason's trying to rep them. So here's the food for thought. When you all look at Big Clan, do you ever go, why are you having all these German players? Get rid of them all, mate. No, because you know that's Berlin International Gaming, and their whole identity is we want German CS to be good and to be represented. So actually, when Jason says, I'm going to represent NA, while all the other people with more money, more resources, who could potentially even do that better currently for where he's at with having bought the team back, he gets all the abuse and none of the support, essentially. And even worse, you even then turn around and pretend like the team that doesn't have all the NA players, that's your NA team. Well, then what? In that scenario, you're not even giving the guy like moral support, never mind financial support, eyeballs. So I think people have to realize Complexity is not trying to be the most cynical team financially. They're not trying to only have the best players in the world. They're trying to do all of it together, have a good financial team, have an NA team, and be successful. They are trying the hardest possible thing they could do simultaneously. So I think that at least deserves like a little bit of leeway, a little bit of grace. I'll tell you what, when they ever actually manage it and they make a playoff, so they beat Navi, did happen this year, the major champions, they beat Mouse Sports, some of the best teams in the world. When it does, can you please cheer for it instead of going, now you have to beat FaZe Clan and G2 and win the tournament? Which, by the way, Team Liquid doesn't even do. But whatever, that's a shot at Team Liquid. There's a lot of shots at Team Liquid and see down there, but it's all good. It's all good.
Yeah, it's definitely tough, but we love what we do. And, like I said earlier, the esports winter is actually worse than we thought it would be. And some days
that's so depressing to hear.
I'm just being honest, man. Like it's just kick in the stomach and kick in the stomach and kick in the stomach. And thank God I have really loyal, super hardworking people around me, like in the front office. Because we started off the year and had a lot of momentum, and just being really honest, the past 3 months have just been some of the most demoralizing kicks in the stomach that we've had. That's being real. And as someone my age, with where my family is, but I've got 2 kids in college, and there definitely come days when you're just looking at things and you're like, damn, man, like there are days when you're really just down and in that kind of place where you're like, why in the hell am I still doing this? I think I could probably go do some other things with my life. But the reason we still do it here is because we really love it. And we are very excited about next year. We think whatever team that we manage to put together, what it looks like, is going to be exciting. It's going to be a refresh, and not just in CS. We're excited about some other things we're doing, and we're going to continue to do the best we can within our financial means and sales abilities to support the rest of NACS, like the Prize Picks Revival Series, and working with Flom and Mythic League, and keep doing all the things that we do. And definitely an honor being on here with you guys. I can't keep up with any one of you three. So I know when to just shut the hell up and let you guys go, because I watch all your stuff all the time. So it's always like, hey, you want to come on the show with this? It's like, man, it's like
We
going
promise
to
it won't run for 3 hours.
Perspective always super valuable on these things, and I figured you'd be a great choice, and you were for the state of CS.
Oh, I really appreciate
sorry
you
things are rough right now, but
by the way, respect for being a patriot and actually putting your principles into the game, not just being like, I'm just here to get $1 or some fame, it's called, but it's not really called. It's NA, but it's not really NA. Actually, fair play for being yourself and representing your org via yourself. Not many people can say that in esports, mate.
Yep. Correct.
Yeah, I appreciate it very much. I appreciate it, and I appreciate you guys having me on. And I just want to encourage you guys too, like, I know it's been difficult for a lot of different areas, and I love the content you guys are putting out. I love that you guys stick to your guns and you don't back down to the bullshit. I love when Richard doesn't agree with me. And, I know that each one of you in your own ways has the scars that I have across your backs, just like I got them across my backs. And I just want to encourage you, like, things will get better. The sun will get brighter again. Yes. You guys have paid your dues, like, not many people around the entire
okay, Jason.
world.
As we know,
I'm telling you, I want to leave you guys with some encouragement. Exactly. You guys
no, I mean, as I said, I am optimistic. I am optimistic. I am optimistic about the future of CS. It's going to take orgs to wake up to the fact that they cannot have their cake and eat it this time in 2025. Hopefully that will extend into 2026. I don't think it's a lesson they're going to learn, because they're so desperate to change the paradigm to one where they make the more money than what they do at the moment. Which, by the way, I agree. I don't think orgs necessarily make money commensurate to their contribution, although some do. And some know how to do that, and some do some shady shit, and some just pocket some money they're not even entitled to, right? Which we've also seen in the not too distant past. For me, though, I do think CS is going to be in a much better place now that we're moving into an open circuit. We have Valve officially recognizing that open circuit and awarding points based on placements over the course of the year. There's no more fluke qualifiers. There's more prize money. There's more money for organizations. And Valve seem to be generally engaged with how we can create a kind of coherence between the game and the major cycle and the competitive scene. And that's rare. Like, that's actually not really been there. It was kind of there for a little bit at the start of CSGO before Valve brought it in-house. It was more the Hidden Path guys that were more about that shit. And so for me, I think we're in a much better position going into 2025 than we end 2024 with. I also will say this. Shanghai is a historic high watermark for Counter-Strike. To run a major in China, to have whatever the final tally was, 12,000, 15,000. By the way, not bullshit with clever crowd shots or whatever, a legitimate capacity crowd in Shanghai watching and supporting teams from around the world. Like, there wasn't a Chinese team in the top 8. Funnily enough, by the way, they weren't even as invested in Mongols as I thought they would be. We all made an assumption Mongols would be the home team. Spirit, in a lot of ways, were the home team. Like, the final they got between Spirit and FaZe, you can maybe make an argument about G2, but based on the crowd reactions, I think that's what the crowd wanted. Pay fucking attention, Rio. I never want to hear the argument again that you can't fucking just support the tournament that you're given. So I actually think this is like, all of this is super, super positive stuff. It's just, unfortunately, the one thing we really did need in CS was a lot of people who were involved in CS to fuck off. That's what we really needed. Like, we needed a big shake-up like that. We haven't got it. I think it's going to have some negative repercussions in the first half of next year, and I guess we'll see where we are. But broadly speaking, more opportunity for everyone in 25, and that's a good thing.
Great. Well, thanks for joining us, Jason. Really appreciate it. Excellent insight into the economics, and hopefully changes some minds out there when you consider tweeting at your favorite teams in the future that there might be other considerations. But as usual, we end the show with Esports Delenda Est. See you next time.